Late Nite L.O.A.D. Late Nite L.O.A.D. Late Nite L.O.A.D. with Wookie and Leprechaun. Late Nite L.O.A.D. Late Nite L.O.A.D. Late Nite L.O.A.D. Late Nite L.O.A.D. with Wookie and Leprechaun.
Hey everybody, and it is me, Web C, and we're just hanging out. I think a couple of the other guys might be filing in to hang out for the night, but we will see. Here I am. Tonight we are going to be listening to Secret Journey to Planet Serpo by Len Caston. It's let's see, Pod People Cast did a read along of the book, so we are going to we're gonna get in on that. We're gonna there's 18 parts to this, so I just want to give you guys a heads up. They range from 10 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So I think we will watch. We're not going to watch episode 1 for sure. Maybe we'll watch episode 2. I'll tell you guys why before we start. I'll be clear about why. So there's a whole bunch to this, whole bunch of stuff. But I mean, we might as well go and watch the first. It's just 9 minutes, but we'll get into it. It's specific. They tell you a reason why you gotta listen to this crap, but so in order to explain everything, and it's kind of odd. It's a great series to watch because I believe everything that this book is talking about is a whole bunch of stuff that's actually happening, actually going on in real life, and or we're actually I wouldn't say it's actually happening. I would say we're finding other documentation that says this is what is happening, and that other documentation is lining up with stuff in this document. Okay, so that's what we're going with. But the funny thing is this document was written years and years ago when people were on full denial of everything. No information had been corroborated or anything. Nothing had been put A, B, C, D, E, F, G. None of that. This book was written way before any of us started deciphering, decoding, or looking into any of this stuff. Okay, right? So, also, while we're here, if you guys we'll take a quick second to talk about these things. There is two different QR code ads up. There's a Web C Patreon, and then there's the MG Gundam Death Scythe Hell Custom. So if you click on the Hell Custom, it should lead you to, or if you scan the QR code for the Hell Custom, it'll lead you over to our sponsor page where you can purchase this kit from our sponsor. WebC Patreon, you can become a sponsor and you can sell your goods here on WebC Official. That's how that works. That's the whole program. That's the process. So if you go to the Patreon, you'll find out how you can become a patron, and then you'll find out how to get your product where this product sits. So that's it for the moment. I just wanted to double check. Okay. So that's pretty awesome. All right. Take those down. Take that down. so they can come down. But yeah, so those have been up. Those are up long enough. I'll throw it up again later on in the show too, just as a quick thing. Our sponsor was pretty happy and excited about that when I told him the news about the new stuff on our software is getting better. And that's why we're here. That's what we do, and that's what we pay for. All right, what's up with these guys? Do I got to send them a reminder button? Hold on, team. Late night load. Where the fuck are y'all at? All right. So just over there, just sending out that message again, real quick. All right. So here we are. We're getting late into the show. Hey, babies, would you just lay down? Come here, lay down. Lay down. Relax. You're making me all sorts of nervous. My dog. She's so awesome, but she's moving around. Yeah. So that is super sweet. For all of those of you who are watching WebC official on Twitter, Twitch, or Facebook, this is the QR code you can scan to head on over to our WebC official on YouTube, which is our official headquarters for you for WebC official. And this is where you can gain all sorts of knowledge and how to get a hold of me and contact me and stuff. All right. So if you want to be on the show, you want to talk about anything, you want to be on any of the other shows we have at WebC Official, just let us know. And that's the QR code. Boom! Goes Dynamite. Just one more time, let's throw that up there. That MG Gundam Deathscythe Hell Custom. That is a sweet kit. I actually have one in my stockpile of kits, and I plan on doing a really sweet build with mine. So get out there, get on it, and hey, look, it's $2 off right now. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in the Gunpla world, it's a couple bucks for sandpaper, So think about that. All right, you guys. And now we are going to get into our show. All right. So it really doesn't have any visual graphics, so I was thinking about just throwing it up and then maybe putting up a graphic while we listen. We'll throw that graphic up while we listen. You guys listen together. I gotta go run and do something while this first video plays.
Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. A true story of interplanetary travel. Written by Len Caston. Part 1. Prelude. Before presenting the Serpo story, it is necessary to convey some preliminary information about important events that preceded the actual voyage. Knowing about these events will give the reader the historical background necessary to understand why MJ-12, the President, and the Pentagon were willing to send 12 American Air Force astronauts to a distant star system on an alien spaceship in 1965. While the events in Germany and Antarctica in the 1930s and 1940s may seem remote from American government post-war space-related decisions, there is a critical connection. After the war, the U.S. military was justifiably alarmed about the Nazi development of anti-gravity fighter discs housed in their secure, icebound redoubt in Neuschwabenland in Antarctica. Thanks to the intelligence that Admiral Richard Byrd brought back from Operation High Jump in 1947, the Pentagon knew that the U.S. was vulnerable to an invasion by these craft, and that we were basically defenseless against such an assault. American fighter jets could not possibly be successful against aircraft that could hover, fly at supersonic speeds, and change direction instantly. And we knew from British intelligence that there were large submarines and a sizable army billeted in Neuschwabenland, so the Germans could also mount an effective land offensive as a follow-up to a devastating air attack. And we knew from British intelligence that there were large submarines and a sizable army billeted in Neuschwabenland, so the Germans could also mount an effective land offensive as a follow-up to a devastating air attack. Consequently, when the friendly Evan aliens from Zeta Reticuli offered a diplomatic exchange program that would expose us to information about their technology, far ahead of anything the Germans possessed, We simply could not refuse such an invitation. Because of the Nazi colony at Neuschwabenland and the space technology that we knew they were developing there, as well as the possibility that Hitler himself continued to command their forces, World War II was not yet over, and it was necessary for the American military to quickly adapt to interplanetary realities in order to win. Because EBIN scientists were already here and helping us to develop anti-gravity technology, it made perfect sense for us to visit their planet, and to learn whatever we could about this other, remarkable civilization that shared our habitation in the Milky Way galaxy. Because of the Nazi colony at Neuschwabenland and the space technology that we knew they were developing there, as well as the possibility that Hitler himself continued to command their forces, World War II was not yet over, and it was necessary for the American military to quickly adapt to interplanetary realities in order to win. Because EBIN scientists were already here and helping us to develop anti-gravity technology, it made perfect sense for us to visit their planet, and to learn whatever we could about this other, remarkable civilization that shared our habitation in the Milky Way galaxy. Chapter 1. Germany. While it is popularly believed that the Roswell incident in July 1947 was our first encounter with anti-gravity disks, or flying saucers, that is not the case. Our military was very familiar with this phenomenon, having knowledge of and experience with these craft extending back to World War II. It is necessary to cover this experience in depth in order to fully comprehend the state of mind of the U.S. military at the time of the Roswell crash. It is now well known that German aeronautical engineers were working on anti-gravity disks beginning in 1933, and by 1945 they had developed a highly sophisticated circular craft that was able to fly at very high altitudes, and with incredible speed using electromagnetic propulsion technology. If the war had lasted only a few months longer, the Germans would have found a way to adapt these craft to aerial warfare, and the Allies' air superiority would have vanished. We would then have lost the war because our main advantage was control of the air. Even though this research and development was contained within the SS, and consequently was ultra-secret, thanks to deeply embedded Allied spies in the Nazi ranks, both Britain and the United States were receiving reports about these disks throughout the war. General Eisenhower was fully informed, as was Winston Churchill. Consequently, it became imperative to conclude the war as quickly as possible. It was very fortunate for the Allies that Hitler chose to fight on two fronts, which made an early victory possible. When he declared war on the United States on December 11, 1941, his armies in the East had not yet experienced a Russian winter, and he was still confident of a quick conquest of the Soviets. When that didn't happen, thanks largely to the American and British armaments pouring into Russia through Murmansk, and the heroic Soviet defense of Stalingrad, as well as the frigid temperatures, the previously invincible German troops were caught in a giant Allied pincer movement following D-Day, and defeat followed swiftly. Karl Haushofer, who was a central figure involved in obtaining the anti-gravity technology for the Nazis, was a celebrated veteran of World War I, who had emerged from that conflict with a lustrous reputation, despite the fact that the Germans lost the war. Karl Ernst Haushofer became a professional soldier at the age of 18 in 1887, and completed artillery school and officer training at the War Academy of the Kingdom of Bavaria. In 1896, he married Martha Meyer-Doss, whose father was Jewish. He then rose through the ranks in the Imperial German Army until, in 1903, at 34, he became a teacher at the War Academy. During that period, the German-Prussian military enjoyed great foreign prestige as a result of their victory over the French in the Franco-German War in 1871. After teaching at the War Academy for 5 years, he was sent to Japan in 1908. Based in Tokyo, he was expected to study Japanese military practices
What's
and
up?
to act as an artillery instructor for the Japanese
Oh,
army.
shit. I didn't hear you come in because I didn't have my headset on. I looked over. I was like, "Oh shit, he's here."
The outset of the Meiji era in
Um,
Made it. Is it just us tonight?
I think so. The Model Rocketeer might pop in
I
when
seen
he gets
Wookie.
home.
I saw Wookie's message, so I know he ain't making it.
Yep. So tonight we are listening to this audio book. It's called Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. I posted about it in the group this morning.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah, I was like, so this is what we're going to talk about. So the first 2 episodes are real heavy talk about World War I and II and Nazi Germany and disappearing Nazis and shit. Like that's that's it's kind of something I wish we could just like really just skim past. But there's some key details that I don't want to that we just got to hear them in order to make the story all cohesive. So that's why so there's going to be a lot of talk about like Nazi Germany and like certain scientists and stuff disappearing, and I think we're getting ready to hear about some U-boats disappearing or something. So that's what we got going on on this so far. And then yeah, just put the kids to bed, and yeah, so we're all excited to come down your way tomorrow. That'll be awesome.
That'll be good times. I'm just sorry. I had to stay away from my camera a second. My table is extremely wobbly because I have kids and stuff that lean on it and loosen up my screws, and it drives me nuts. And I got to tighten these real quick. Otherwise, this leg's going to end up falling off.
All right.
It might be Kiriana's fault.
Ooh.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. Burn. So, all right. Well, I'm going to get back to playing this.
Yep, I'm right here. I'm
already
listening.
brought in French, Italian, and German advisors in the early stages. By the 1890s, the Imperial Japanese Army had grown to become the most modern army in Asia, well-trained, well-equipped with good morale. However, it was basically an infantry force deficient in cavalry and artillery when compared with its European contemporaries. Artillery pieces, which were purchased from America and a variety of European nations, presented two problems. They were scarce, and the relatively small number that were available were in several different calibers, causing problems with their ammunition supply. Hence, Haushofer was brought to Japan in 1909 based on his artillery expertise and his general experience with Prussian military discipline. He was greeted by the emperor upon his arrival, and he enjoyed a highly privileged social status while he and his family remained in Japan. Already fluent in Russian, French, and English, he easily added Japanese and Korean to his language repertoire, and, consequently, he was accepted into the highest strata of Japanese society and mingled with the power brokers in the emperor's circle. It was in this circle that Haushofer encountered the secret society at the base of Japanese political power, which encompassed the emperor as a figurehead, the Kokuryukai, better known as the Black Dragon Society. Ultranationalistic, militaristic, and fascist, the Black Dragons, in addition to controlling Japan, infiltrated the power centers of all the countries of East Asia, even extending to the United States. They did not hesitate to use assassination and propaganda to further their goal of Japanese world dominance. At the innermost core of the Black Dragon Society was the Green Dragon Society.
Oh, so important little tidbit.
Political and economic.
They have referred to Bush and Obama both as dragons from the Asian cultures. Bush and Obama have both been referred to as dragons. So that's kind of funny. That's like a funny little tie-in right there of like, here's who we're going to call the Illuminati. We're going to call them Black Dragons in this one. So I thought that was
power resolved.
But in real life,
in
they've
black
been called.
magical
I was
power.
like, that's odd.
Ostensibly, the Green Dragons were a small Buddhist monastic sect, although the monks also observed the Shinto ceremonies. In the 16th century, they chose Kyoto as their central location. In the 19th century, it became known that the Green Dragons maintained a close affiliation with a mysterious group called the Society of Green Men, who lived in a remote monastery and underground community in Tibet, and communicated with the Green Dragons only at the astral level. Capable of manifesting tremendous psychic and occult power, the Green Men easily controlled the Green Dragons, who viewed the liaison as advantageous to them, not realizing who was controlling whom. Able to see into and travel through time, the Green Men had far-reaching plans extending to the year 5000. Impressed with German-Prussian militarism, the Green Men decided that an alliance with Germany would help them reach their 50th century goals. Consequently, they convinced the Green Dragons to invite Haushofer into the society and to initiate him into some of their mysteries. By giving him powers that only they could convey, they hoped to use him as the catalyst to bring about an invincible fact.
I am offering you a chance to atone.
All right, so that's the end of the first little episode part.
Chapter 2.
So they're taking like this dude and they're like, grooming him to like make contact is what they're doing. He doesn't know it yet, but that's what they're grooming him for.
Antarctica. Prior to the 1930s, the continent of Antarctica drew scant attention as a possible place to establish a permanent colony. There really was no reason why any civilized nation would want to consider such a frozen, forbidding land as a place for human habitation. But it did become a magnet for intrepid explorers who wanted to make noteworthy discoveries, or to be the first to reach the South Pole. With the advent of aviation, reaching the South Pole by air became a real possibility, and it was accomplished by seasoned aviator Richard Evelyn Byrd on November 28, 1929, earning him the gold medal of the American Geographical Society. Byrd's expedition established a base camp on the Ross Ice Shelf, called Little America, and commenced exploration of the continent by snowshoe, snowmobile, dog sled, and airplane. Byrd's second Antarctic expedition in 1934 nearly ended in tragedy. He spent 5 winter months all by himself in a small meteorological advance station where he was overcome by carbon monoxide from a small heater, but he was rescued in time by team members from the base camp. This harrowing adventure was described in his book, Alone, first published in 1938. Given the sparse international history of the rough-hewn exploration of the continent, it was surprising, even astonishing, that the Germans would seek to establish a colony in Antarctica in 1938. There had been 2 previous German expeditions, in 1901 and 1911, each lasting 2 years, but those pre-Nazi journeys offered no hint that the Germans actually wanted to live there. But the Nazis were very serious about this project. The preparations for the German Antarctic expedition of 1938 were massive and comprehensive. The Nazis even brought Richard Byrd, the preeminent world authority on Antarctica, to Hamburg prior to the mission departure to advise the members of the team. They also asked him to accompany the expedition, an invitation he declined. Byrd was a civilian at the time, and his agreement to counsel the team members did not, in any way, constitute sympathy with the Nazi regime. Byrd, of course, had to be aware of the German expansionist intentions, since Hitler had already taken over Austria. But after the Munich Agreement in September 1938, the world lapsed into the delusion that Hitler had no further territorial ambitions. Then there was the distinct possibility that Byrd went there on a U.S. government mission to covertly obtain information about Germany's plans for Antarctica. The Germans utilized the seaplane carrier Schwabenland for the 1938 journey. According to Russian ufologist Konstantin Ivanenko, the Schwabenland sailed to Antarctica, commanded by Albert Richter, a veteran of cold weather operations. The Richter expedition scientists used their large Dornier seaplanes to explore the polar wastes, emulating Admiral Richard Byrd's efforts a decade earlier. The German scientists discovered ice-free lakes, heated by underground volcanic features, and were able to land on them. It is widely believed that the Schwabenland's expedition was aimed at scouting out a secret base of operations. The seaplanes dropped swastika flag pennants all over the Queen Maud land area, staking out a widespread German territory amounting to 600,000 square kilometers, about 360,000 square miles. They then established a base in the Mühling-Hoffmann Mountains, very close to the Princess Astrid Coast, which they referred to as Neuschwabenland, named after the Duchy of Swabia, part of the original German kingdom. The legend and lore surrounding the Nazi Antarctic base is voluminous, bordering on overwhelming. Various writers say that German convoys started bringing in equipment to develop this base beginning in 1938. According to the Omega File, beginning in 1938, the Nazis commenced to send out numerous exploratory missions to the Queen Maud region of Antarctica. A steady stream of expeditions were reportedly sent out from white supremacist South Africa. Over 230,000 square miles of the frozen continent were mapped from the air, and the Germans discovered vast regions that were surprisingly free of ice, as well as warm water lakes and cave inlets. One vast ice cave within the glacier was reportedly found to extend 30 miles to a large hot water geothermal lake deep below. In October 1939, 1 month after the beginning of World War II, the Schwabenland was turned over to the Luftwaffe, which means that Hermann Göring took over the project. On December 17, 1939, the ship again left Hamburg headed for Antarctica, loaded with scientists and equipment. This time they were going to build a permanent base. The Omega File says, Map of Neuschwabenland. Flag show German colonies. Various scientific teams.
Okay, so, like where it is, like I said, so it talks a lot about Germany and stuff and what they were doing down in Antarctica. And so fast forward through all this. This is basically what it all ends up being. It's like a whole bunch of ships, people, important stuff go missing. And like I said, it kind of drags on here for like good 30, 40 minutes.
Well, I mean, I like the like Antarctica. I like a lot of the theories and everything else that's going on with Antarctica.
Yep.
That's definitely anytime I got a headline pop up on about Antarctica, I dig into it. I want to hear what they're saying, whether it's off the walls crazy or be believable. To my opinion,
Right.
because
So-
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on down there as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the fact that you're not allowed to really
Just go there.
Yeah. Like it's like okay, like there's something. There's
Yeah.
something that all of the nations have agreed that they don't want us to stumble upon. There's something there. Whatever it
I'm
is,
pretty sure
it's
it
really
is.
hard to say, but I mean, there's obviously something there because there's no other reason for the United Nations to shut down exploration there.
Maybe it's where the White Walkers actually live.
That'd be cool. Let's go.
But okay, so along with that, but what I've been noticing is a lot of whatever the conspiracy theories are that you hear about like Nazi Germany and stuff like that, they're all popping up in this book. Like they're dinging left and right. They're just dinging. So as we go through this next section, that's why I wanted to just point out real quick is why they kind of talk about the Nazis so much is because it's all important on that level of what they were doing down there. This is like it's not like saying that the Nazis were important. It's just saying like, hey, they were really up to something, and we should have been looking at that. So back to the story.
Moved into the area, including hunters, trappers, collectors and zoologists, botanists, agriculturists, plant specialists, mycologists, parasitologists, marine biologists, ornithologists, and many others. Numerous divisions of the German government were involved in the top secret project. The development effort continued throughout the war. An article appearing in the Plain Truth magazine in June 1952 says, in 1940 the Nazis started to amass tractors, planes, sledges, gliders and all sorts of machinery and materials in the South Polar regions and, for the next 4 years Nazi technicians built, on Antarctica, the Führer's Shangri-La. The article goes on to say, they scooped out an entire mountain, built a new refuge completely camouflaged. A magic mountain hideaway. According to the original Bonjour magazine, a Parisian publication in the 1950s, the Nazi engineers constructed buildings at this base in 1940 that could withstand temperatures up to minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. There are many cave inlets in this region, allowing submarine access to a relatively comfortable disembarkation. Engineer and physicist Vladimir Tertsitsky says that the Germans populated a city called Neu-Berlin under the ice with a community of scientists and workers that approximated 40,000 civilians by the end of the war. This city was just a small section of the vast Neuschwabenland colony under Queen Maud Land. Presumably, the population was supplied with food via merchant vessels from Argentina and by growing crops hydroponically. Then, of course, the Southern Ocean is rich with fish and marine animals. It is also possible that the Germans had begun agricultural projects in the warm water lakes region of Antarctica. Considering that Germany was only 1 year away from embarking on the invasion of Poland, and thereby starting World War II, it is astounding that the Germans would have devoted such energy and so many resources to the development of a base on a frozen wasteland 5,000 miles from Germany. Several other sources have claimed that Antarctica was actually previously Atlantis, which moved to the South Polar region as a result of a prehistoric pole shift. Since the reptilians are known to have inhabited Atlantis, it is very possible that their colony remained underground after the shift and they were still living under Antarctica. Even Angus says that Neu-Berlin adjoins the prehistoric ruins of Kadath,
See what I mean?
developed by H.P. Lovecraft, which may have been built by settlers from the lost continent of Atlantis well over 100,000 years ago. Another unnamed occult researcher claimed that Neu-Berlin has an alien quarter where Pleiadians, Zeta Reticulans, Reptoids, Men in Black, Aldebarani and other visitors from the stars dwell. It is not at all far-fetched to conclude from this that the reptilians encouraged the Nazis to establish a colony adjoining theirs, possibly as a refuge in the event the war turned out badly. But more likely, this colony was to be a base for joint German-alien scientific and technological development for interplanetary travel and conquest. As we have already seen, the Nazis had executed a pact with the reptilians living in Patala in 1933 that resulted in a transfer of advanced technology to Germany, including anti-gravity discs. This would explain why, as we will see below, the Nazis eventually moved all the aeronautical engineers and scientists involved in the development of the anti-gravity discs, as well as the prototypes themselves, to Neuschwabenland. At that early date, the Nazis were supremely confident of winning the war, and would not have been thinking about a refuge. It would, therefore, be reasonable to conclude that this is the real reason, and the only reason, that the Nazis went to such trouble to build not just a base, but a city, under 2 miles of ice halfway around the globe. After all, they envisioned the conquest of the entire Eurasian landmass, so it's not as though they were so concerned about territorial deprivation that they would have to move to the South Pole to survive as a nation. It appears that, even at this early stage, the Nazis were already anticipating travel to other planets alongside their reptilian compatriots. It was from this Antarctic base that the joint German-Japanese suicide mission to Mars was launched in mid-1945. The German population knew nothing about any of this. It is certainly understandable that the Nazi leadership would not have wanted the German people to know about all these fantastic plans. They would surely have concluded that their leaders were raving lunatics. But perhaps the most important reason for the secrecy was the fact that the Nazi overlords had no intention of relocating the entire population of Germany to Neuschwabenland. This colony was to be reserved for only the purest specimens of the Aryan race.
Well, of course.
By mid-1943, the Allies noticed heavy submarine traffic in the South Atlantic, and began to suspect that something unusual was going on. The Neuschwabenland base construction and settlement had been removed from the control of failed Luftwaffe chief Hermann Göring and was now under the control of Heinrich Himmler, who was using the large Milchkuh, which means milk cow, supply submarines to transport personnel and equipment to the Antarctic colony. These Special 21 U-boats, diverted from Atlantic warfare, were almost as large as tramp steamers, and, thanks to a newly developed snorkel, were capable of making the entire journey underwater. According to Ivanenko, Himmler selected 10,000 of the racially most pure Ukrainian women out of the 500,000 ethnic German women who were deported from Russia, and sent them to Neu Berlin on the submarines. They were all blonde and blue-eyed and between the ages of 17 and 24.
You know what's weird about that? Okay, I got to stop and talk about that real quick. That's weird that they mentioned Ukraine. Okay, with what's going on right now, did you know that there were actually remnants of Nazi militia still in Ukraine, like today? Like some of Ukraine's military, they're based off of the Nazis, like SS shock troopers and shit. And they totally so same symbols and everything. They totally idolize the Nazi ideals and stuff. A lot of people don't talk about that, but it's funny they mentioned Ukraine when talking about like the Aryan race and moving forward, and then like to compare it back into reality. What are we looking at? Right now in Ukraine, there's a war going on, and like all this, it's crazy. It's super crazy. So that's kind of one of the. It just gets better and better.
Or Antarctic settlement women. He also sent 2,500 battle-hardened Waffen-SS soldiers who had been fighting on the Russian front. At 4 women to each soldier, they were expected to breed the Aryan population of the new civilization under the Antarctic ice. Since the European War appeared lost in 1944, the huge submarines also carried the prototypes of the anti-gravity discs, along with the crucial aeronautical engineers and scientists. It is very likely that Hans Kammler, who reported to Himmler, and all his important workers and technicians, along with the designs and raw materials for the new anti-gravity aircraft, were taken to Neuschwabenland in 1945. And there is compelling evidence that Hitler himself may have been taken there while his double was executed and made to look like a suicide, in the underground Berlin bunker. All during that period, German warships patrolled the South Atlantic waters and sank merchant vessels that they encountered anywhere near Tierra del Fuego in Argentina, the gateway to Antarctica. The deadly pocket battleship Graf Spee was stationed in the South Atlantic and sank 10 merchant vessels from various countries in the early days of the war. It would appear that the Germans were concerned that reports about the increased submarine traffic would be relayed to the Allies, which might imperil the Antarctic settlement. According to noted Third Reich researcher/writer Rob Arndt, writing on his website, antarctica.greyfalcon.us, after the war, the Allies were able to determine that 54 U-boats were missing from Nazi Germany. He says also that between 142,000 and 250,000 people were unaccounted for, including the entire SS technical branch, the entire Vril and Thulgase shafts, 6,000 scientists and technicians, and tens of thousands of slave laborers. He claims that this information was obtained from high-level declassified communications between Washington and London in late 1945 and 1946. This conforms to other information that Neuschwabenland was primarily a technological and scientific development colony, meant to be inhabited by only a very small, select pure Aryan group. The rest of the German population was left to perish in the Allied onslaught. This core Aryan colony would then breed the new race. With their super weapons and their extraterrestrial friends, the Neuschwabenland civilization would then be positioned to establish the Fourth Reich to take over and enslave the inferior races on the rest of the planet. This planetary conquest would be facilitated by the expected next 90-degree pole shift, which would eliminate most of the existing population, and would move Antarctica back to a temperate climate near the equator. They would remain safe throughout the catastrophic events in their secure redoubt under the 2-mile mantle of ice. According to UFO researcher/writer Eric J. Coron, 10 of the missing German U-boats participated in a top-secret mission in the last days of the war. In an article titled "How High Can You Jump?" in the UFO Casebook, Coron says, "The fact that in the dying moments of the Second World War, 10 U-boats, based in Oslo Fjord, Hamburg, and Flensburg, were made available to transport several hundred German officers and officials to Argentina to found a new Reich is widely accepted. These officers, mostly involved in secret projects, and many of whom were members of the SS and Kriegsmarine itself, sought to escape the vengeance of the Allies and continue their work abroad. The U-boats were filled with their luggage, documents, and, more than likely, gold bullion, to finance their efforts. 7 of the 10 of the U-boats, based on the German/Danish border, set off for Argentina through the Kattegat and the Skagerrak. None were ever seen again, officially. From what we have already seen, it seems evident that these submarines went to Antarctica, which was to be the home of the Fourth Reich, not Argentina. Argentina had joined the Allies in March 1945 and was now hostile to Germany." Coron also says that many of the missing U-boats were the very advanced Type 21 and Type 23, manufactured late in the war, able to travel much faster than previous models, and equipped with a new snorkel that allowed them to make the entire transatlantic voyage underwater. These could easily evade Allied warships in the South Atlantic. All these submarines were known to have departed their home ports between May 3rd and May 8th, 1945. The naval war ended on May 5th, 1945, when Admiral Karl Dönitz commanded all submarines to surrender, although the official German surrender was on May 8th. 3 of these ships did eventually show up. U-530, under the command of Oberleutnant Otto Wermuth, and U-977, commanded by Oberleutnant Heinz Schaefer, surrendered to the Argentine Navy at Mar del Plata on July 10, 1945, and August 17, 1945, respectively. U-1238 was scuttled by her crew off northern Patagonia, which is at the tip of South America, and was very likely en route to or from Antarctica. Wermuth and Schaefer were intensely interrogated by both the United States and Great Britain before being released as civilians. It is very likely that information gathered in these interrogations triggered both Operation Tabarin and Operation High Jump, although the British already had incriminating information of their own that they had not shared with their U.S. counterparts. According to James Robert, a British civil servant and World War II historian, in an article in the August 2005 edition of Nexus magazine, the Germans succeeded in building an underground base in the massive ice cave, using the discovered inlets for access. He claims that British soldiers from the secret Antarctic Monheim base found the entrance in late 1945 and followed the tunnel for miles, and eventually they came to a vast underground cavern that was abnormally warm. Some of the scientists believed that it was warmed geothermally. In the huge cavern were underground lakes. However, the mystery deepened, as the cavern was lit artificially. The cavern proved so extensive that they had to split up, and that was when the real discoveries were made. The Nazis had constructed a huge base into the caverns and had even built docks for U-boats, and one was identified supposedly. Still, the deeper they traveled, the more strange visions they were greeted with. The survivor reported that hangars for strange planes and excavations galore had been documented. The Nexus article included a long-kept secret, first-hand account of what was called Operation Tabarin II in October 1945 by a former British Special Air Service commando who had participated in the raid and survived. While Britain had several secret bases in and around Antarctica, the Modheim base was the largest and was top secret because it was only about 200 miles from the Mullet-Hoffman Mountains, and it was from Modheim that the attack was launched. During training for the operation, the agent was informed that Antarctica was Britain's secret war. The British bases in Antarctica had been set up in anticipation of an eventual confrontation, after they had learned about the construction of the Nazi base in 1939. This information was revealed by three key Nazis who were captured by the British: Rudolf Hess, Heinrich Himmler, and Admiral Karl Dönitz, all of whom knew all the details of the secret base, and by submarine commanders Otto Wermuth and Heinz Schaefer. In fact, it was highly probable that Dönitz was named as Hitler's successor precisely because, as commander of the submarine fleet, he was best positioned to protect the Antarctic colony, the future home of the Fourth Reich. This choice by Hitler came as a great surprise to the entire German High Command. After a month of arduous cold weather training, the Special Commando team was informed that the tunnel to the Nazi base had been discovered during the previous Antarctic summer and explored by a previous SAS team. Of that team of 30 men from the Modheim base, there was only one survivor who had succeeded in somehow lasting through the Antarctic winter without going stir-crazy. He told the new team what they had discovered and how the others had died. The new team set up an advanced base at the mouth of the tunnel, and then were told they had orders to follow the tunnel all the way to the Führer, if need be. 2 men remained behind with the radio and other equipment while 8 commandos, led by a major and carrying a huge amount of explosives, went into the tunnel. After walking for 5 hours, they entered an enormous cavern illuminated by artificial lighting. In his account, the SAS agent says, "As we looked over the entire cavern network, we were overwhelmed by the numbers of personnel scurrying about like ants. But what was impressive was the huge constructions that were being built. From what we were witnessing, the Nazis, it appeared, had been on Antarctica a long time." He says he was very impressed by the advanced Nazi technology. The team was discovered and fought a heroic engagement while being chased after setting the mines in place. Only 3 survived the encounter, but they succeeded in detonating massive explosions at the mouth of the tunnel, and sealing it so that no entrance remained. After being evacuated to the Falkland Islands, the 3 survivors were told that their mission was to remain top secret. The SAS agent says, "Upon reaching South Georgia, we were issued with a directive that we were forbidden to reveal what we had seen, heard, or even encountered." British newspaper reported the Dönitz appointment. Clearly, the United States did find out about Operation Tabarin, either by covert intelligence operations or by deliberate intelligence sharing by the British. The latter seems more likely because the British were probably convinced they had not succeeded in destroying the base, and wanted the US to finish the job. Also, the OSS had learned a great deal from the interrogations of Wermuth and Schaefer. Planning for Operation High Jump was initiated by Secretary of the Navy James B. Forrestal on August 7, 1946, less than a year after Operation Tabarin II concluded. Operation High Jump was sanctioned by order of the Committee of 3, consisting of the Secretaries of State, War, and the Navy. Presumably, the cabinet had been advised by several intelligence agencies and already had the approval of President Harry S. Truman. This was to be a massive naval operation involving a fleet of 13 ships, including a communications-laden flagship, 2 icebreakers, 2 destroyers, 2 tenders carrying 3 patrol bomber Mariner, or PBM, seaplanes each, 2 tankers, 2 supply ships, 1 submarine, 2 helicopters, and the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, carrying 6 DC-3 twin-engine planes equipped with both wheels and skis for landing gear. The flagship USS Mount Olympus also carried a contingent of 4,700 Marines. War Hero Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, who was also then U.S. Chief of Naval Operations, appointed Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd as director of the mission. He also named decorated veteran of polar operations, Admiral Richard H. Cruzen, as task force commander. The operation was publicized as exploratory and scientific. Clearly,
You ask me, that's a whole lot of artillery to be bringing down to the South Pole. Like, what's down there that you gotta, like, you thinking that there's gonna be Nazis down there? I'm like, that's a lot left, because they said they're already there. Like, we think we did it, but we just want you to go finish it up. Like, damn, like, how big was that base actually, or did they not get it all?
Well, and what have they done with everything that they were supposedly doing down there since?
Oh yeah. Well, not only that, but what did they dig up? Like, they obviously dug something up that had to do with something to make it interesting to be down there. Like,
Yep.
they're just not down there for nothing. That's the given.
Yep.
So,
With the involvement of 3 of America's top naval brass as well as a Marine fighting unit, this was no scientific expedition. The U.S. Marine Corps at that time was considered the toughest military organization in the world, still including in its ranks many veterans of the brutal Pacific Island campaigns only a year earlier. So this was no novice, token military force intended to accompany a scientific expedition. The publicity notwithstanding, the military nature of the operation was clearly stated from the top down. The Committee of 3 said that the main purpose of the expedition was consolidating and extending U.S. sovereignty over Antarctic areas, investigating possible base sites, and extending scientific knowledge in general. Admiral Mark Mitcher, commander of the Atlantic Fleet, said that the main objective was to extend U.S. sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent. Presumably, the presence of such a formidable fighting force implied that this sovereignty might have to be gained by military action. But that made no sense because no potential enemy was identified. So clearly, that was just a cover story, and the real intent of the mission was to covertly destroy the Nazi base. Lest there be any doubt remaining, Admiral Byrd said, however, the basic objectives were not diplomatic, scientific, or economic, they were military. Quite possibly, it was actually Byrd who had initiated the entire operation and had convinced the cabinet of the necessity of the mission because of what he had learned in Hamburg in 1938. This, added to the reports of Operation Tabarin and the U-boat commander interrogations, were sufficient to launch the largest Antarctic expedition ever organized. The operation, planned jointly by Admirals Nimitz and Byrd, involved a 3-pronged approach, very similar to an invasion scenario and typical of a military attack. The central group, consisting of 2 icebreakers, the aircraft carrier, 2 cargo ships, the submarine, and the flagship, would re-establish the previous base at Little America 3, now to be called Little America 4. The 60 C-3s would take off from the carrier in the Southern Ocean and fly over the Ross Ice Shelf to the base where a landing strip would be constructed for the planes. They would then conduct reconnaissance flights over the interior using ground-penetrating radar. When ready for the attack, the Eastern and Western groups, consisting of a PBM seaplane tender, a tanker, and a destroyer each, would encircle the continent from 2 different directions, and would rendezvous in the Weddell Sea off Queen Maud Land. 4 DC-3s, carrying explosives, 1 piloted by Admiral Byrd, would then fly over the South Pole from Little America toward Queen Maud Land, while the PBM seaplanes were launched from the tenders. The PBMs, or flying boats, carried loads of bombs and were capable of sinking ships from the air. They had sunk 10 German U-boats during the war. Descriptions of the expedition never mention the disposition of the Marines. Most likely they would be divided into 2 groups and carried on board the tenders and destroyers from which they would be ready to disembark near the mouth of the tunnel from 2 different directions. The presence of the destroyers and the PBMs clearly signaled the military nature of the operation. So all 3 groups were to converge on Queen Maud Land. Presumably, the expedition forces had learned from the British the precise location of the entrance to the tunnel leading to the Nazi base, and they now had more current information from the DC-3 reconnaissance flights. One of the PBMs flying off the USS Currituck seaplane tender in the Western group discovered the ice-free zone and the warm water Rainbow Lakes in central Antarctica. The seaplane landed on one of the lakes and found the water temperature to be about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The Eastern group encountered difficulty. The PBM designated George 1, flying off the seaplane tender USS Pine Island, suddenly exploded in midair. 3 seamen died in that incident. There was no official explanation for the explosion. The remaining 6 men in the crew were rescued 13 days later by the seaplane George II, having survived on the supplies from the plane and the wreckage. More mysterious was the fate of the tender itself. According to Eric J. Coron, in his article How High Can You Jump?, the USS Pine Island was struck from the Naval Register on an unknown date. Her title was transferred to the Maritime Administration for layup in the National Defense Reserve Fleet on an unknown date, and the ship's final disposition is unknown. Now, how does one go about losing a major surface ship? According to the official records of Operation High Jump, all the ships in the Eastern Group met up off Peter I Island in the Bellingshausen Sea on February 14, 1947, and prepared to sail together around the Antarctic Peninsula to the Weddell Sea. It appears that the Eastern and Western groups were supposed to rendezvous there just off the coast of Queen Maud Land to execute a joint attack with the DC-3s. There is no further record of activity of any of these ships until March 3, 1947, when the operation was suddenly prematurely terminated, and they were instructed to sail back to Rio de Janeiro. According to a Russian documentary posted on YouTube, the fleet encountered several flying discs that emerged from the water and attacked the ships in a 20-minute engagement. That must have occurred in the Weddell Sea during that period. Apparently, the discs were protecting the entrance to the tunnel. In the video, the discs can be seen darting over a ship. It was claimed that 68 men were killed in that action. If the Pine Island was indeed sunk, it is very likely that it would have happened during that battle, and many of the 68 dead would probably have been Marines. Whatever happened in the Weddell Sea, it caused Admiral Byrd to cancel the entire operation on March 3, 1947. This was only 2 months into the mission, originally planned for 6 months through the Antarctic summer and fall. On board his flagship, the USS Mount Olympus, as it briefly docked in Valparaiso, Chile, en route back to Washington, D.C., through the Panama Canal, Byrd granted an interview to Lee Van Atta, a reporter from the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio on March 4, 1947. The story based on that interview appeared in the newspaper the next day. Van Atta wrote, Admiral Richard Byrd warned today that it is necessary for the United States to adopt protective measures against the possibility of an invasion of the country by hostile aircraft proceeding from the polar regions. The Admiral said, It is not my intention to scare anybody, but the bitter reality is that if a new war should come, the United States will be attacked by aircraft flying in from over one or both poles. The fantastic speed with which the world is developing, the Admiral declared, is one of the objective lessons learned during the Antarctic exploration recently effected. I cannot do more than deliver a strong warning to my compatriots in the sense that the time has already passed in which we can take refuge in isolation and rest in the confidence that distance, the oceans and the poles constitute a guarantee of security. The Admiral reiterated the need to remain in a state of alert and vigilance and build the last redoubts of defense against an invasion. The capabilities of the Nazi flying discs must have made a deep impression on the Admiral for him to have issued such an alarmist warning to the most powerful nation on Earth. Byrd arrived back in Washington on April 14, 1947, and was extensively debriefed by naval intelligence and other government officials. Reportedly, Byrd flew into a rage while testifying before the President and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and strongly suggested that Antarctica be turned into a thermonuclear test range. After the display, Byrd was hospitalized and was not permitted to give any more interviews or briefings. Now certain that the Third Reich had survived in Antarctica and perfected their flying discs, it is likely that alarm, and even panic, prevailed at the Pentagon. The anti-gravity disc development program at Wright-Patterson had not yet yielded a prototype. If, as Byrd warned, the Nazis decided to invade America, we would be powerless to defend ourselves. Very possibly the President and the military might have been considering Byrd's suggestion to employ the nuclear option. But that could blow a hole in the ozone layer over the South Pole, which would have dire environmental consequences.
Yeah.
But less than 3 months later, while several alternatives were being weighed, as if dropped from heaven, an alien craft crashed into the desert near Roswell Army Airfield in New Mexico, and one alien survived. That changed everything, and it became a whole new ball game.
Here's to living every day like it's a snow day. To getting out of hibernation.
So I think we're out of the big Nazi territory or whatever with it, and now we're talking about like Admiral Byrd went back to America and lost his mind. Like I think he just saw too much destruction at once or something, or
I mean,
the,
did he lose
the,
his mind or did they shut him up?
true, right? Is the
I mean,
report
that's-
says he lost his mind, but as soon as you started hearing him talk about the crazy stuff he talked about, like the one video that constantly circulates of this guy is him always talking about there's more land beyond Antarctica. He always says that. Like there's this one, that's like the big quote from him, right? So,
Which is, I mean, there's a whole bunch of conspiracies about that. I mean, that's where supposedly Asgard is, and anytime anybody
yeah,
from outside of the Antarctic wall tries to come help us, a natural disaster occurs in the area that they have intruded into us on to wipe them out. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff around that.
that's crazy. So, and yeah, that's what they're talking about in there. There's, So we are on chapter 3. This is a 20-minute chapter.
Roswell was not the first incident. We now know that there were at least 2 other crashes of alien craft in or near the United States prior to July 1947. The U.S. Navy retrieved a disk in the Pacific, west of San Diego in 1941. Better known was the spectacular crash in the plains of St. Augustine, southwest of Socorro, New Mexico, on May 31, 1947. The alien craft was resting on its roof and still smoking when the military arrived. 4 aliens were on the ground, 3 alive, and 1 dead. Bob Shell, the former editor of Shutterbug magazine, and a military cameraman assigned to film the scene, reported that each of the live aliens was tightly grasping a box and making shrieking noises. He said that they looked like circus freaks. 2 of the 3 surviving aliens were injured and died within 3 weeks, at which point the cameraman was called upon to film an autopsy of one of the creatures in Fort Worth, Texas. This ultimately became the famous Santilli autopsy film. As can be seen in the film, these aliens appeared almost human, although smaller, and had 6 fingers and toes on their otherwise human-looking hands and feet. The alien craft and bodies were taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Ohio. So the military already had experience with this type of event before Roswell. Given this experience, we can reasonably conclude that Army procedures for dealing with crashed alien craft were in place before Roswell, and that the Pentagon had established a policy to not reveal these events to the press if they had any military implications. That particular crash location was far enough removed from military installations to not have necessarily aroused suspicion of alien surveillance. But any alien presence at all in New Mexico was suspect, since that entire state was, and still is, the very heart of the military-industrial complex. This craft went down not far from the Trinity site at the north end of the White Sands Proving Ground, changed to White Sands Missile Range in the mid-60s, where American and German scientists worked on rocketry, and where the first atomic bomb had been tested on July 16, 1945. Not much farther north, near Santa Fe, was Los Alamos Laboratories, where our most advanced nuclear scientists continued to develop improved atomic bombs. Not far away, in Albuquerque, was Kirtland Air Force Base, where nuclear weapons delivery systems were developed and tested. And the Z Division, or Sandia Base, where scientists and engineers worked feverishly on atomic-related weaponry, was also near Albuquerque. Since that incident remained top secret, we can assume that President Truman and the Pentagon believed it to be defense-related. But the Roswell event would have generated a serious alarm about a possible alien invasion. After all, this craft appeared to be spying on our most sensitive military installation, the 509th Bombardment Group at Roswell Army Airfield, near Roswell, New Mexico. This was the home base of the B-29 squadron that had dropped atomic bombs on 2 Japanese cities 2 years previously, and was responsible for any future missions involving atomic weapons. This type of surveillance was very suspicious, and was consistent with a possible planned invasion of our planet by an extraterrestrial civilization. As the victors in World War II, and as the only nation possessing atomic weapons at that time, we would have constituted their greatest obstacle to a planetary takeover. It is estimated that by July 1947, we had less than 50 atomic bombs, although plans were in the works for developing an arsenal of 150, Some of them might have still been in development at Sandia, but most of them probably would have already been delivered to Roswell Army Airfield, ready for deployment. This was a very thin margin of protection, and destruction of the Roswell atomic bomb arsenal would have left us, and therefore the entire planet, basically defenseless against the likely advanced weaponry of the aliens. We were not afraid of any earthly power, but we couldn't defend against an enemy that we knew nothing about, and that had the propulsion technology to travel in space. The fear was compounded when we learned that the alien ship contained human body parts. With the chronicles of World War II just barely in the history books, we were now faced with a potentially catastrophic confrontation that would have made the Axis struggle scene like child's play by comparison. It was a very scary scenario. The US might have solicited the aid of the Soviet Union to try to quickly develop advanced technology and weaponry to fend off an assault. We would not have hesitated to recruit the top scientific brains of our erstwhile mortal enemies, the Nazis. It would have been a massive effort. In the introduction to his book, The Day After Roswell, co-authored with William J. Burns, Colonel Philip J. Corso sounds the alarm. He says, "In those confusing hours after the discovery of the crashed Roswell alien craft, the Army determined that in the absence of any other information, it had to be an extraterrestrial. Worse, the fact that this craft, and other flying saucers, had been surveilling our defensive installations, and even seemed to evidence a technology we'd seen evidenced by the Nazis, caused the military to assume these flying saucers had hostile intentions, and might have even interfered in human events during the war. We didn't know what the inhabitants of these crafts wanted, but we had to assume from their behavior, especially their interventions in the lives of human beings, and the reported cattle mutilations, that they could be potential enemies. That meant that we were facing a far superior power, with weapons capable of obliterating us." In 1962, Colonel Corso was given the job of seeding American industry with the objects found in the Roswell disk. He got this assignment from his boss, General Arthur Trudeau. At that point, he had no way of knowing about the events that had transpired in the 15 intervening years since the crash. That information was so secret and highly compartmentalized that even President Eisenhower didn't have the whole story. Only MJ-12, the super-secret advisory committee, impaneled by President Truman, knew all the details. All Corso knew was that the intriguing pieces of equipment picked up at the crash site displayed technology very far in advance of anything we knew about. His job was to quietly turn the technology over to the scientists and corporations that were best positioned to understand it, and to use it as a springboard to perhaps copy it and develop it further. In that role, he was a lone gunman. He didn't have the clearance to learn about what had happened since 1947. He just had to assume a civilian-like aspect, and to silently insert these objects into American R&D, and then disappear. So it is not surprising that, when he wrote his book in 1997, he still believed that the aliens known as Evans were hostile, and a potential threat to the United States, and the planet. It's an incredible testament to just how effectively the compartmentalization and secrecy machinery functioned that, even 15 years later, an Army general and colonel had no inkling about the fact that we had been hosting those aliens at Los Alamos laboratories in Area 51, and had already successfully back-engineered an even flying disc. U.S. Army Colonel Philip J. Corso. President Ronald Reagan was briefed about our experience with crashed alien discs and extraterrestrials between March 6th and 8th, 1981, and again between October 9th and 12th, 1981. Both briefing sessions took place at the presidential retreat at Camp David, Maryland. The briefings were recorded on 54 audiocassette tapes. The tapes were kept in the possession of the Defense Intelligence Agency, or DIA, because some of the information discussed a potentially hostile alien race that might have posed a threat to our national security. Consequently, it was appropriate that the cassettes remain in the custody of the Department of Defense. The tapes were declassified in 2007 after the completion of the mandatory 25-year waiting period for the non-disclosure of classified government documents, and they were released into the public domain. President Ronald Reagan's 1987 UN speech, when he mentioned a possible alien invasion. The transcript of one of these sessions was published by Victor Martinez as release 27A on the SERPO website, www.serpo.org. Email messages from Anonymous to Martinez about Project Serpo were initially referred to as postings. Martinez precedes the transcript with the following declaration. This release has been approved by and at the highest levels of the U.S. government as part of a continuing public acclamation program. Others present at the briefing were William Casey, the CIA director at that time, and 3 advisors, as well as a female CIA transcriber. Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger and presidential staffer Michael Deaver were present at the beginning, but then bowed out. The following segment of the briefing concerns the Roswell incident, and should be considered to be the most authoritative account of what happened at Roswell. The caretaker. Good morning, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to give you a bit of information on my background. But before that, please, Mr. President, if you have questions during this briefing, just interrupt me, sir. I have been employed by the CIA for the past 31 years. I started the caretaking status of this project in 1960. We have a special group of people whom we call Group 6, that cares for all this information. President. Good morning, I hope. Well, I believe I will ask questions. Bill briefed me back in January, but Bill didn't tell me all because we only had about 1 hour. Casey. Mr. President, I only gave you a quick briefing for the NSDD, National Security Decision Directives, that we want to incorporate into the overall action directives about this subject. Advisor number 3, Caspar and I have details far beyond what I knew before January. The last administration wasn't too keen on making all of this stuff accessible to us during the briefings in November and December. President. Well, I knew a little about this subject before. Back in 1970, Nixon had all of the good stuff and wanted to share it with some of his friends. Nixon showed me some papers. Not sure about who authored them, but, well, something about New Mexico and other places. Nixon was pretty fascinated with it. He showed me something, some kind of object or device that came from one of their craft. Something that was taken from the New Mexico crash site. I don't know if, well, do we know what it was? I don't think we knew, or maybe now, after 11 years, we might know. The caretaker. Mr. President, I can answer some of those questions. Do you wish for me to begin? President. Oh, well, what level is this? I mean, what was it called? I don't remember what they called this. Casey. Mr. President, code word. It's called top secret code word. This information is beyond top secret, as I said before. It has its own classification. It is very compartmentalized. President, well, I guess just the minimum. Are we recording this? The caretaker, Mr. President, no, unless you wish. Casey, yes, it is, CIA female transcriber, who is doing that. I think we should. I don't want to make any mistakes later about this. Advisor number 4 should also stay, since he is one of the caretakers of the information. President, well, I don't want anyone leaking this stuff. Not knowing what we are about to discuss, oh well, Bill, I guess it is your call. The caretaker. Mr. President, I estimate this will last about 1 hour, at least the first part of it. This is a very complicated subject to brief. I can do it, but maybe the questions will extend beyond the first time period. President. Okay, I see. Let's take a break and then reconvene. After a short break, the meeting continued. The caretaker. Okay, Mr. President, are we ready? President. Yes, we are, let's go. The caretaker. Mr. President, as was mentioned earlier, I must say that this briefing has the highest classification within the U.S. government. I will start with a slide presentation. I have most of this briefing on the slides, but I also have an outline that I have passed out to each person in attendance. The United States of America has been visited by extraterrestrial visitors since 1947. We have proof of that. However, we also have some proof that Earth has been visited for many thousands of years by various races of extraterrestrial visitors. Mr. President, I'll just refer to those visits as ETs. In July 1947, a remarkable event occurred in New Mexico. During a storm, 2 ET spacecraft crashed. One crashed southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and one crashed near Dattle, New Mexico. The U.S. Army eventually found both sites and recovered all of the debris in one live alien. I'll refer to this live alien as EB-1. President. What does that mean? Do we have codes or a special terminology for this? The caretaker, Mr. President. EB means extraterrestrial biological entity. It was a code designated to this creature by the U.S. Army back in those days. This creature was not human, and we had to decide on a term for it. So, scientists designated the creature as EB-1. We also referred to it as NOAA. There was different terminology used by various aspects of the U.S. military and intelligence community back then. President. Do we or did we have others? The number 1 would seem to indicate we had others. The caretaker. Yes, we had others. Back then, the term was EB, and no number designation. We'll explain how the others came into our knowledge. President. Okay, sorry, I was just wondering, and I guess, well, I'm sure the briefing will cover this. Please continue. The caretaker. All the debris and EBs recovered from the first crash site were taken to Roswell Army Airfield, Roswell, New Mexico. EB was treated for some minor injuries and then taken to Los Alamos National Laboratories, which was the safest and most secure location in the world. Special accommodations were made for EB. The debris was eventually transferred to Dayton, Ohio, home of the Air Force Foreign Technology Division. The second crash site wasn't discovered until 1949 by some ranchers. There were no live aliens at this site. All this debris went to Sandia Army Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. President. Okay, a question regarding the first site. How many aliens were in the spaceship? The caretaker. 5 dead aliens and 1 alive. The bodies of the dead aliens were transported to Wright Field in Ohio and kept in a form of deep freeze. They were later transported to Los Alamos, where special containers were made to keep the bodies from decay. There were 4 dead aliens in the second crash site. Those bodies were in an advanced state of decay. They had been in the desert for the past 2 years. Animals and time got to those bodies. The remains were transported to Sandia Base and eventually onto Los Alamos. We determined that both crashed spaceships were of similar design and the bodies of the aliens were all identical. They looked exactly the same. They had the same height, weight, and physical features. Here are the photographs of the aliens. President. Can we classify them? I mean, can we? Well, connect them with anything earthly? The caretaker. No, Mr. President. They don't have any similar characteristics of a human, with exception of their eyes, ears, and a mouth. Their internal body organs are different. Their skin is different, their eyes, ears, and even breathing is different. Their blood wasn't red and their brain was entirely different from human. We could not classify any part of the aliens with humans. They had blood and skin, although considerably different than human skin. Their eyes had 2 different eyelids, probably because their home planet was very bright. President. Maybe I'm getting ahead, but do we know where they came from? Mars, our system, or where? The caretaker. Yes, Mr. President, we do know where they come from. I can go into this now, or I can wait until it comes up in the briefing. President. No, please, continue. I can wait. The caretaker. Thank you, Mr. President. EB stayed alive until 1952 when it died. We learned a great deal from EB. Although EB did not have voice organs like humans, it was able to communicate with an operation performed by military doctors. EB was extremely intelligent. It learned English quickly, mainly by listening to the military personnel who were responsible for EB's safety and care. EB was housed in a special area at Los Alamos and Sandia Base. Although many different military doctors, scientists, and a select number of civilians studied EB, it never became upset or angry. EB helped us learn from all the items found in the 2 crash sites. EB showed us how some of the items worked, such as a communications device. It also showed us how various other devices worked. President. Excuse me, but you are referring to this creature as an it. Did it have a gender? The caretaker. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but yes, it was male. Within EB's race, they had males and females. President. Okay, thank you. Please continue. The caretaker. It took the EB spaceship 9 of our months to travel the 40 light years. Now, as you can see, that would mean the EB spaceship traveled faster than the speed of light. But this is where it gets really technical. Their spaceships can travel through a form of space tunnels that gets them from point A to point B faster without having to travel at the speed of light. I cannot fully understand how they travel, but we have many top scientists who can understand their concept. For those portions of the Reagan briefing in March 1981 relating to what we learned from him, and from the crash disks, and our subsequent association with this planet opened up an entirely new era of our planet's history. It was the first baby step for Earth on the stage of galactic affairs, and it initiated a lasting alliance between the United States and a civilization on a distant planet. This was our antidote to the threat of the Fourth Reich in Antarctica, and it came at a perfect time. Roswell transformed American technology, expanded our cosmic vision, and opened the door to the space age. Pixel Stars.
All right. Well, I mean, that's where we can leave this story off for the night. Like that's a great stopping point. They even gave us like a little ending, little capstone. And so what I can say is the oddness of this is looking at this, I was trying to figure out when this book was written. So go to what I was just looking up on this. So I just want to clarify when this book was written.
So I think, almost like I'm not like, at a frustrating point of like listening to this, because I mean, for me and the stuff that I've looked into, a fair amount of this stuff is very believable. And what irritates me about it is, I mean, anybody with a half a brain knows that no matter which way you go, we've been lied to about our history. I mean, you can say it's simple things, you can say it's made way more off the wall. You can say it's borderline crazy. There's a lot of different ways you can go with how we've been lied to or what we've been lied to about the history, especially when you go back really far. I mean, because when I think about like going to school and learning history, outside of going back to Columbus, there was nothing really taught in history, at least at any of the schools I went to. And we know that we have, a much deeper history than that, other than the basics. We were hunter-gatherers. Very, very brief, subtle descriptions of what we were like back then. But, we know we've been lied to. And, this stuff is just what frustrates me is I want to know the why. And I know I'm probably never going to get to know the why. Or if I do find out the why, it's probably not going to, I'm not going to want to have found out the why. It's probably going to be pretty bad if I do find out the why. But it bugs the crap out of me. It absolutely bugs the crap out of me. I love this. What we're listening to, I love absolutely. I just wanted to kind of point out, like, the irritation of it. Like, it's just like, come on, man. Like, like.
So what's so weird about that?
There's a fair amount of us that have a half a damn brain to be open minded. I get, the scary part is the other half that don't have a half a brain that are so so in tune with the structure that's been laid out in front of them that they would just overload and break down, and it would be all chaos.
Right.
But if we would have started telling the truth a long time ago, it wouldn't be a problem. You know what I mean? And we could, I don't know. It's frustrating me. It's really that part of it frustrates me. But I got more questions than I can fathom sentences for. Just through listening to this for the last hour
exactly. And like, okay, so what's getting me is like I'm having a hard time tracking down when this book was written. But so what my thought process is like this total book, what I believe is that this dude wrote this book in the 90s, I believe.
What's the exact title of this book?
The book we're listening to is called Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, A True Story of Interplanetary Travel by Len Kasten. Okay, so I'm just going to look up that dude. No. Now he writes a lot of books about alien stuff. He's like, this isn't his only book. He's also really doesn't have a lot of
You said Secret Journey to
Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, SERPO. $2013. That's when he wrote this book. All right, so he had to have been researching this and looking up this shit for a decade.
Well,
like
I also
working on
how,
this.
some of the stuff we're being told, I would really like to know how he got that information to be able to talk about.
That's a big part of it because a lot of this shit hasn't even been wasn't even corroborated or wasn't even like the government hadn't even come forward and said, yes, this has happened. Like it was like he had early access to all the documents or something. It is very clear that that's what this person had. He had early access to a lot of documentation because.
So I'm gonna have to start checking out some of this guy's stuff. One of his other books is titled Alien World Order. That's interesting. Yeah. Dark Fleet is another one written by him.
I was thinking about checking that one out.
Let's see, what else do we have? I got a couple other. So he's actually on Audible. To be able to listen to this. And so I'm looking at just the list of listeners also enjoyed, and so that's where I found those two titles.
Okay.
And there's also Richard J. Dempsey. I hope I didn't got his last name. I'm not the best at reading names. But he's a writer of Project Serpio. So I don't know if he has his own information on that, or he's just biting off of this information, or vice versa.
Okay, so yeah, that book came out 5 years later, so that's probably
an opinion off of this information kind of a thing. Maybe got some more of his own. Might be worth maybe off air checking that out and seeing if there's additional information, or if it's just an opinion off of this information.
okay. Yeah, I'll look into this.
I use Audible, so I might download some of these. When I'm driving around, I really don't listen to the radio at all. So I like being able to pull up my phone and just do some good listening. I mean, I've actually the Book of the Giants and the Book of Enoch I got on Audible, so I do a lot of my listening on that just while I'm
Okay.
driving 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there. It's just a better way of me passing my time than listening to radio music and talk shows.
Right. Yeah. And the other new thing that's we got on here was this the QR code stuff got added finally to
I saw
Restream.
that. I like that. We're gonna pop it up right now for a second for everybody.
Yeah, so this QR code down here is for if you scan this QR code, it'll bring you over to our sponsor site where you can purchase this Gundam for the price right there on the screen. It's a pretty awesome deal. Over there, a couple bucks off. It's a really big kit, and this is the one with like bat wings and the scythe like the Grim Reaper. So this is like the really popular one that everybody really likes. So that guy's awesome. Then we got other ones too. So this one's gonna disappear. So we have this one. This one's gonna bring you to our YouTube channel, WebC Official, and this one will bring you to WebC's Patreon, where you can sponsor WebC Official and you can start to have stuff like this of your product pop up on WebC Official during our videos. And yeah, that's kind of a new thing that we'll be doing, and we'll be offering that out to anybody who wants to select a sponsorship with us. So it's a pretty sweet deal.
Super dope, and just going off of his scan code, because I scanned it right away just so I can see how it pulls up and how it looks, and it brings you right to his website. It brings you to that specific build, but then it also gives you things you may also like, and just his full webpage, so you can get in there and click on some things and see if you find something you like. If you're into the Gundam build, that's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So, and right now, our sponsor has a large selection of kits in stock that he's sitting on. He said, but right now he's sitting pretty heavy on any of the Wing Gundam Master Grade kits. He's got quite a few of those kits sitting around. So, Death Scythe, Sandrock, Heavy Arms, and I think Tall Geese. Those are going to be the kits he has. He's sitting on a lot of them because they just came in a bulk order that way. And it's kind of out of your control sometimes when you do the pre-order bulk order stuff like that. But hey, that's why he's got guys like me and Leprechaun, so we can get on the grind and send you guys stuff. So for you residual watchers who aren't watching us live, go over into the comments section, and in the comments section I will also post I will figure it out. I will get you a link or whatever to post in there in the comment section. Or I'll just come back later and post a quick link real quick to the site like I always do. Or one of the other guys will definitely pop up and do if they hear me talking about it. And then, yeah, we can be done talking about our sponsors. The show, though, back to that whole topic, is what I'm super weirded out about is I am super weirded out about that whole entire first half, like how it all like documents like this happened because this happened and this happened because this happened, and it just makes me like it makes you go what, and then none of that information was available to the public at the time that this book was written. Like we all gotta, like that's.
I guess for me, maybe I missed it, but did he talk about the connection of the information regarding. I mean, where did I miss the information that he was giving us about the Germans, and then going into Roswell and the Americans? Did I miss where that was connected, or is that a build up to where it's going to get connected later on?
So the story about Germany was the build up and lead up to the Americans getting lucky and finding a UFO crashed in America.
All right, okay. And so then to jump back, that's what I get. I just was wondering if there was something extra I missed. So,
So America was on the build up, was warned by Admiral Byrd, like, you need to be on the build up, and we're nowhere near the top dogs anymore. There's somebody new. Admiral Byrd came back, lost his mind, said it's crazy stuff down there. America got real lucky with the two crashes in 1965 or whatever, the Roswell crashes. So there was two of them, and they found one of the crashes a couple years after it crashed. It didn't crash right away, So that's where that whole lead up was. It was basically like all of this information in the past is going to be important as we go in through and talk about all these different things that lead up to what's going to cause us to send a whole bunch of humans off to this other planet. So that's what the book is generally about. They send 12 Marines and scientists to another planet.
Well, we don't got to jump into that. Let's
yep. So that's
yep.
Yep.
So I mean, to jump back to to the beginning. I mean, we've always known, and if you look into it even just a little bit, you hear a lot of easy access to crazy stories of the Nazis doing very different scientific experiments and what's the word I'm looking for? They were different. Everything that was going on by everybody else, the things that they were digging into, and they're you always hear about the Nazi scientists. They were really trying to find that next move, that next step, that something different. Whether it was they kind of had a lead and they knew to look for that something different, or they were just trying to be different. You always get those stories. So the beginning part of this, some of the information was really new to me. Some of it was, stuff I've already kind of been on my radar, but none of it was unbelievable to me. I guess it's kind of what I want to wrap that part up to is none of it was like, that's absolute bullshit. Like, let's just switch subjects. Like, no, like, they were on a different level during that time with what everybody else was going on, what everybody else was doing. They were definitely on a different level. So I really am not in big disbelief in, that those chapters of this story. It was all well within my reality.
I agree too. There was 10 years ago in 2013, if I were reading this book, I would have called bullshit on a lot of what I was reading. I would have been, because I was still looking into stuff, and 10 years ago I had not heard any of the stories of Antarctica. And now here I am 10 years later. I know a lot of the stories of Antarctica. And these were one of them. This involves one of them. Another one that I saw was it involves like some squid or something that's under the ice in under Lake Ice Age. Lake.
Yes, it took them a very long time to dig that hole to get down there. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh yeah. So that was I don't know how to say it. That was just to dive into it. Like, I was just like, okay, that's cool. Let's see what else is about Antarctica. And then, I learned there's pyramids in Antarctica. There's a lost city. There's 5 different technologies exposed out of the ice. 5 different civilizations technologies that I've read up on.
Yep.
And each one's very different.
Just a briefly crafted one. Nite God covered a story about enlarged humanoids down there, and there's some Marines that went into a cavern and found almost like a pyramid or a temple, and they found some frozen and large humanoids in containers or something. Look it up; it's a fun story, whether you buy into it or not. But they ran into a couple of them, or one of them that was already busted open, as if they were awakening, and they ran into some of these large humanoids and got into an altercation. And that was a good story. Another one of the ones that I don't see a lot of, but I've stumbled across was a group of military guys, going into a structure, and there's a few different rooms, and in these different rooms there was technology that they were running into that was way beyond anything that we're even at right now. I mean, it was.
I've heard a similar one.
I don't remember all of the really good details to give you in depth on that one, but I mean, it was just they were running into some really crazy stuff and some really crazy technology that was capable of things we can't do right now. I mean, things that we're not even doing 30 years from now. It was good stuff.
The craziest one. Night God said it too, or he talked about it, but I read before Night God about this one, and the craziest one I read about is there's this tunnel, and it like leads down at a steep angle, and when you get to the end of this tunnel, you enter into this room, and it's like a giant octagon shaped room or whatever, and in each wall there's a bunch of symbols that outline each wall, and then in the center is a different species of hominid or civilized creature, and there's one for us, there's one for the reptiles, there's one for the tall grays, there's one for the tall whites, there's one, and if you go into or go near those, like the wall becomes translucent like a portal or something. And they said that you could you walk through, and that's it. They were like that was the end of the story. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that was the craziest thing I've heard.
Yeah. I want to say that's part of one of the ones that I've heard, and I mean to kind of wrap that part of kind of what we're back talking on. There's something in Antarctica. I mean, believe this story, that story, the next story, or all of the stories. There's something going on in Antarctica. It's not. I mean, you couldn't convince me otherwise. There's too many secrets. There's too much, hush hush, and there's too many stories. You know what I mean? You can tell me. You can tell me one BS story. You can tell me another. But I mean, when you start getting to, I can't. Keep trying to count them. Eventually, it's like, okay, some of these might just be bullshit cover up stories, but there's something going on. There's something. I mean, the fact that it's shut down for, just a basic common explorer, like I would have to get a special right. I would have to go through hell and back to try and get the okay to go into there. And even if I was allowed to go into there, I'm sure that there's a list like no tomorrow of where I can and can't go when I do. It's there's
along with that, heavy military guard. You'll have to have a heavy military guard presence while you're there. Like, what did I do?
As far as I know, I'm just walking on a bunch of ice that's slowly melting. Like, what's the problem? You know what I mean?
That's
like, what aren't you telling me? So I mean, So to wrap up the Nazis and the Antarctica stuff, like, I think there's a lot. There's enough there to believe. And then moving into the next segment, you know what I mean? Everybody's heard of the Roswell crashes. Everybody's well aware there's been other ones. I think the detail that they covered in the story and where a lot of that stuff went was really informative. It was really good. Some of it, some of the locations they talked about, I have heard about before. Some of them were new, but I was just really impressed with how he overall wrapped all of it up, or kept it.
Dude, it's like it's like the whole thing all put together in this nice, neat little package.
It is.
And
It is.
you're just like checking off every box that you're just like, yes, that checks out.
I almost
That checks out.
want to go, crazy level and make a little spider web, and you know what I mean, and, check all the dots and stuff, because he did a good job. He did a great job with laying all that out.
Even including the video of the alien autopsy as part of the layout, just like making sure that he is pulling from reality everything that he's talking about. Like, oh, there's this video. Okay, that video was made by this person and it's real. And this person.
And I've heard of the they refer to him as Noah, the one survivor from the crash. I've heard of that story before. I've heard that they were able to help keep him alive for enough years to really do a lot. The one thing to listen to this story and kind of my own thoughts intermixed, I guess, is obviously originally they're they're overlooking our national defenses, where we're working on the atomic bomb. They could be an enemy. This could be, a problem. But then when later on in that chapter, that, segment, they start talking about, well, they did keep him alive. How this E.T. kept his composure, was informative, even teaching them how to use some of the technology. Makes me kind of look back on that, other, kind of natural human assumption. Oh, they're going to destroy us. It's like, well, were they really? Because if this dude wanted to hurt us, do you really think that he was giving them small bits of information to think that we would trust them? We would trust them?
Oh no.
He knew that.
Oh no. He
wanted to better and elevate us.
He was a messenger.
Yeah.
Is what I feel like he was ultimately, a good messenger. And he came first, and larger ships are gonna come. That's something I think is one of the topics of conversation that he didn't really like to have, but when he talked about it, he said, oh yes, there's a big ship on the way. I watched his whole interview, at least one of them, in quotes, let's say. I've watched the whole interview, and with that said, he does say in one of his interviews that there is a large, he doesn't call it a mothership, he just calls it a large world ship that is on its way to Earth, and they're not coming to take over. They're coming to integrate or whatever is what he's saying.
So then I guess where I get concerned with my own opinion and digging and beliefs of what's going on in the world to some very puny little small degree is because I believe that there's already one or multiple other races here, as well as possibly some more of that race here. But I think I do think that the Draco or the reptile race I think has a bigger presence here than we realize or acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm right, could be wrong. I could be sounding crazy. Who cares?
I've seen some things. Seen some videos.
If that race has already planted their seeds and has already have a presence, obviously they're not going to be open armed. They're here. They're when they do show up, they're going to want to try and play them out in the media and everybody else. Those are bad guys. To come into, we gotta have war. We have to have, they're gonna, play it up. They're gonna do everything they can to not let them.
Under the disguise or under the terms that we've been here for years, hiding peacefully.
So
I call it bullshit. They ain't been hiding peacefully. There's a whole nother story and a whole nother show for that. the lizards or the draconians, I have a whole list to talk about of them people.
I mean, I've been, I've been digging into that, since back in the, I don't know, late, 90s, early 2000s. I had a close friend, rest in peace now. But we would hang out and, just go into, deep talk about whatever subject. And he's the one that originally put me on David Icke way back then. And I bought, I bought one of his books, and then obviously as the internet became available, I was able to just seek out a lot more of his information without, buying every single book that he dropped. But he's dropped tons, and I mean, he digs real deep into the lizard people, the Dracos, whatever you want to call them. He really buys into a lot of that part of the conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. I've seen some videos of like people's eyes changing. I've seen videos of like somebody's hand shape shifting from like a short hand to like freakishly long, and then snapping back like elastic.
A lot of it's the eyes. When you see a lot of
it's the eyes. You're right.
Conspiracy stuff about certain celebrities being, potentially these shapeshifters. A lot of times it's an eye giveaway during an interview or something where they like.
The other giveaway is ears.
Yep.
The earlobe right here. If it's like sunken in and connected, it's a lizard wearing a mask. If it's an open earlobe, it's a human, and that's how you. That's one of the reasons. Like even like current politicians today, it's been pointed out that some of them aren't always themselves.
I was at work yesterday during our slower hours, and a top 10 video came up, and I just watched it humorously, but it was, a lot of it's like, I see it, like, yeah, like, I get it, like, I'm, and it's my cup of tea, and the like, I wish I saved it so I could have given the lady a shout out. Did a really good job at being, non-biased one way or the other, and just being like, hey, like, here's the top 10 for you guys, and buy into it, don't buy into it. Here's what I got, and I enjoyed it. It was long enough but short enough to be entertaining. And I mean, most of the people that she brought up and showed videos of, were already on my radar. There was a couple of them that threw me for a loop a little bit, but I had videos and stuff I hadn't seen. Maybe I'll try and find her, and so I can throw her in the comments too, just to give her a shout out, because it was a fun watch. But yeah. So I mean, but that's that just a deep pondering thought of the leprechaun of that
I totally into it. One thing that this is related to that I'm totally into is technologies. Just inventing, thinking of, thought process, theorizing all technologies. I love just sitting down in a room with a giant pad of paper and just theorizing out a technology, and then taking what we have for real technology in the real world and putting those pieces in place and start building a technology that's new, but out of technology we have. Because that's basically what we need to start doing now. Is like we're at the point where yes, we've built all the basic core elements of things. Now, if we start combining them, we could create some crazy shit with it.
Well, like the one of the things that they talked about, they talked about two means of travel is with Noah's craft. One that it can go faster than the speed of light, which is interesting to me because from what we've been told, what we've hypothesized as a kind of that, once you go past the speed of light, you could potentially like bump into time travel. But the other thing that intrigued me about that is that they also start talking about their crafts being able to go into these portals or tunnels that can bring them from one destination to another even faster than just traveling the speed of light, which I was waiting for them to label it, but they never did. But my first thought process was, wormholes.
Yeah, they said they called them tunnels.
They did.
They called them tunnel and energy tunnels, and they didn't label them wormholes. You're correct. And I was just in my head. I'm just going, yeah, wormholes. I'm just shaking my head over here, going, yep, I don't know exactly where they're leading to, but they're not going to say it. With that, I think, the two means of travel, and like I said, the other means of travel is just as significant. Like it's because that means of travel can take us from being just a planet on Earth or just pure on planet Earth to the moon and Mars real fast. That technology, because it's a pretty speedy technology. I was doing the math the other day when we were watching the video the other day of the where I don't know who else was watching. You should have been watching it with me, where they blew up the balloon, and then I thought you shared it with me, and then comes the jet from the other way, and then there was a thing that skipped across the screen. Okay, well, I was trying to do the calculations, and I think if my calculations are right, that thing was moving between 150 to 200 frames per second.
Yeah,
because it was close enough but far enough apart to skip 2 frames. So my thought is, even if you're at 120 frames, if you can skip 2 frames, that's an extra 30 to 40 frames that we could add on to that movement. So if we calculate it all down, that thing was going good 200 frames a second. That's pretty fucking fast. Our jets don't go that fast.
At that.
Yeah.
We're not talking about in a close shot. Yeah.
No.
Oh.
So
go ahead.
To recalculate that over into feet per second or miles per second or whatever it was going, I don't have that calculation done yet, but video wise, if we're moving and watching, that's what I was calculating for, and that's fast. That's beyond fast.
Yep. And so the other thing with like the tunnel, because they just call it tunnels. And so the other thing, aside from wormholes, when we start talking about aliens and stuff like that, like I instantly jump back to a TV series.
Sliders.
Nope.
No.
Stargate.
Okay, Stargate. Okay.
You had a gate, that you could, instead of going to a wormhole and driving through it, you had a gate that you could dial in and almost create your own wormhole.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? And I don't, as far-fetched as it may seem, I don't think that's that far-fetched. I really don't. I don't think that's that's impossible. I don't think that it's disbelievable. And so, that's just another one of those things where, there's something there, I think, and that could have been something that they could have been referring to without saying it, which is why they didn't say the word wormhole, which is very commonly used.
Yeah. I don't have another idea of what we would call it, though. That's why we call it a wormhole, because we don't, unless we come to the conclusion that a black hole and a white hole are a tunnel, a space tunnel, and that we just need to get over our fears and hitch the ride, like that might be it too. I don't know. I'm like, that's where I'm at to hang out.
We've always. I think black holes. I think that they are very understood right now. We've only witnessed things get forcefully pulled into it. You've never, collected or gotten any data of something forcefully driving straight into it to minimize the stretching and pulling and breaking down of the molecules, right?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Technology that could defend yourself to those manipulations of the black hole. So who knows? I do promise you one thing, that 100 years, 200, 300 years from now, the granite
assumption that we're still going to be around, we're going to have a way different opinion on what a black hole is from now to then is 100% guaranteed. I promise
Yeah.
you. Not the same thing that we teach right now.
No,
so-
I don't think it's going to be what we teach.
I don't think that's far-fetched either.
Not at all. I do, however, feel like 100 to 200 years from now, we'll have discovered a new space anomaly that's just as mysterious as the black hole is today.
I think that we will discover 100 of them.
Yeah,
This one.
yeah. It'll just
Let's
keep.
be realistic.
What I'm saying,
in a telescope that mind boggles us, and we say that we understand and we get. I don't think we have a fucking clue. I think that, you know what I mean, all the information that you can pull together from, you know what I'm saying, the UV lighting to the this to the that to the other, and separating them together.
Yeah,
I don't think it even scratches the surface of us, you know, getting to the point where we can interstellar travel and witness it for ourselves, and then at that point also have better equipment to get better readings of what these anomalies and these things are actually doing. I think with for every 100 understandings we have and assumptions we have of the universe, I think there's 10,000 more real answers that we have not yet discovered.
That's a cool thought. That's a cool thought. That falls into the whole lines of for every universe we can think of, there's a million or an infinite number of universes that we haven't thought of. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that.
In some other universe, I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah. Something like that's definitely happened somewhere else.
Fucking got little antennas coming from our head.
Yeah, we're wondering if that blue planet has toxic air, breathable air. That we're orbiting around.
Did you see the video or the talking of the storm on Jupiter? The infamous eye becoming smaller.
I didn't hear anything about it becoming smaller, but I heard something about it to where it was like they said in the next 100 years or something that it's supposed to disappear.
Yep.
Or something.
It's weird.
So it is weird. But then there's another storm on Jupiter that's just as weird. On the North Pole of Jupiter, there's a hexagon. And inside this hexagon are 6 perfect tornadoes that are constantly spinning on the North Pole of Jupiter. It's weird. As they get more and more detailed images coming back, that's what they've figured it out to be. I don't know what they're calling the storm, but it's really cool, and that's just what it looks like. And they're like, yeah, it's kind of like these giant tornadoes, and you can see them. I was like, all right, cool. Let's see if I can pull up that picture.
Just to talk about Jupiter, just because that's obviously the biggest planet in our solar system. And there's so many unique things about it, with it being a gas giant as well. Do you know how many moons Jupiter reportedly has?
72 or something like that.
92.
92. Okay, I wasn't that far off.
What gets me about that number, and what makes me, I'm excited. Hopefully, the assumptions and conspiracy theories of how fucked up and corrupt we are. Hopefully, I'm just wrong. I don't think I am, but hopefully we can move in a very positive way in the future and get out there and explore. Because out of those 92 moons, let's talk about the possibilities of what you could potentially run into. 92 moons. We don't have double-digit planets in our solar system. We're talking about 92 moons around one of those planets, and some of those moons are bigger
to give some serious recognition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
oh yeah. Some of them are almost as big as Earth.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. You know, it's like so. You know, I mean, those you can't out of 92 moons, you can't tell me that we can't at least find some sign of microscopic life form on one of those sons of bitches. You can't. You could not.
So this is a storm.
Yeah. No, let's talk about this because I've been looking at this for a second.
So this is that storm on Jupiter that I was talking about. That's like perfectly shaped and everything. Here's like some infrared or whatever with it. And then here's like to give you an idea of how big this storm is.
Well, how big that planet is.
That too, but so that one tornado in the middle is bigger than America.
Let's go.
And so
God, could you imagine?
here's what it looks like. This is what it looks like from outer space.
That would take up so much of our planet alone.
Oh yeah, so definitely. But it's so odd that it's that shape. Like that shape is just. They say it's just such a weird shape.
Well, it's geometrical.
Yeah. It's got a total. It's got one of those weird shapes about it where I'm just like, I don't know.
So I was, I gotta start saving my videos. Websy, I'm gonna tell you that right now. I run into my feed is filled with so much stuff that's up my alley that I run into a lot of fun things, whether it's believable or not. And I gotta just start saving them or sending them to you, so that way I have a reference points to get back to them when I bring them up in conversation. Because a lot of them I watch, I don't even think I'm gonna bring it up, and then I jump on the show with you and we start just rambling on. But where was I going with this? God damn it. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. I feel like an idiot.
Oh, don't feel like an idiot. NASA rover finds clear evidence of ancient waves. Yes, waves on Mars.
I actually saw like hypothesized or whatever image of Mars and what they think their oceans look like back in the day, and the whole around the whole planet, pretty much the whole northern hemisphere was all oceans. All of their landmass was on the southern of the equator of the planet, and everything, the entire northern hemisphere was all oceans there back in the day. And I thought
that's dope.
That image was so cool to look at.
That's so dope.
It makes you wonder.
I like that.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
One of the other things, I don't know how much I do or don't buy into this. But they were talking about. I mean, they bring up two things that I'm not totally bought into, but I'm not opposed to either, and that's that they've ran into the Apollo programs ran into life on the moon, and they've also NASA's been covering up images from the moon and from Mars because they've also ran into still life on Mars, and they've been manipulating the images to the sky. Is it?
Well, what is it? Back in 2015 or 2014, somebody went out in Mars and cleaned off one of the rovers or something. like legit, like it was a story, and then they like tried to hurry up and say it was a windstorm and it blew the dust off the top. But no, what happened was it looked like somebody, it was in the shadows while the rover was taking pictures, was in the shadows actually like hand wiping the thing down.
So then I wasn't even going to bring this up because it's, probably way off the rail for some people. But since you dug in, I'm gonna go there. So they've discussed the fact that regardless of what the mainstream media and everybody believes, we already have started colonizing Mars, and we've been having problems with some line of life for humanoids there on Mars, almost battling with us because they don't want us.
Well, I mean,
one of the more off the rail, digging down the deep end theories or whatever. It was almost they talked about, top line military guys getting, recruited for these programs to go to Mars and go do their thing. And when they got done almost with like their tour, I guess you would call it, when they came back here, they were almost like wiped or brainwashed to the point where everything that actually did really happen there to them felt like more than nothing than a dream. And, how much I buy into that, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not going to blow it off the shelf either. Just because there's so much secrecy that it's hard to decide what really is and isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, regardless, it was an interesting read, I guess, is what I really want to get is, whether I personally bought into it or you as listeners or not, or want to dig into it more, it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't buying into it all the way, but I wasn't going to just dismiss it either.
Yeah, sometimes I have a hard time latching on to the story. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that I do or don't believe. It's just sometimes there's just I'll start reading, and if something just feels like makes me go, okay, what's the story getting to, buddy? Like what if I have to have that feeling more than once while I'm reading the story, I kind of just get kind of off put and don't keep going, or I'll read like into it a little bit, and then I'll go research and see that, oh, this dude's just telling somebody else's story or something, So yeah, I agree with you, but my biggest hang up is I don't have the ability to latch on too good with some of these stories.
No, I mean, I think for me, I feel like it's a lot easier to hypothesize on what I think happened in the past, putting, mythologies and biblical stories into perspective for myself, easier than what's going on in the present. And maybe that's just a programming. Maybe even as outside of the box as I may think I am, maybe I'm not. So I always try to stay as open-minded as possible about this, just because if there's one thing that I am sure of, it's how much I'm lied to about the past, present, and potential future. And I know that that's a truth. I know there's truth there. If you want to talk to me about Greek mythology and the Greek gods, I would tell you that I think that they were stories related to either ancient aliens or ancient enlarged humanoids, which came from ancient aliens, or the biblical term fallen angels. And I think that you could have some fun digging into a bunch of different altercations on how it played out or how you want to buy into it. And so just buying into that, and then everything that we haven't been told for the last umpteen thousand years of history outside of, I mean, really, there's not much that I feel like I was taught at a young age. Like I was saying, prior to Columbus, the only other like real in-depth history story you could get was from the Bible. I can't think of
and
any
further the further back we go when it comes to that whole the history lesson thing, the more we realize that history is just a constant. It's like a wheel just going around in a circle. Is what we learn, and that nobody's willing to stop the wheel from going in that circle, and it's a really weird circle, right?
Well, how many times have you, because I know I have ran into, big sites of stuff that brings up something that goes against what's been taught, and you kind of get a glimpse of it right away in the beginning because somebody that found it talked and should have, and then it just gets swept under the rug. It disappears. And that's what.
Well, there's those, and then there's also those who are out there to cause misdirection and misguidance to create more division. Because those people are out there too, and they're the okay. I'm going to be honest about it. The tribes of Israel people. We just gotta cut them off. Like they're like their stories aren't wrong, but what it is what they think those stories mean aren't what those stories mean. The tribes of Israel people think that those stories make them some sort of blessed people above all else. Okay,
Yep.
and
not.
I think that's not true. I don't think that's true.
Yep.
But I believe that those stories hold some credence that, God said, well, I chose you to, suffer, types of things like that. Well, your God could just be an extraterrestrial that just said, I don't care about you anymore. Go away. I don't want to take care of you.
Well, and that's where, that's where it comes down to what was going on in those areas at that time. I mean, those are the right questions to ask. And what was happening there, then, and why? And that's where to kind of lapse it back to the beginning of this conversation with us talking about the videos was. That's where it comes back to looping up my frustration. I've honestly, at a young age, I was intrigued by Greek mythology. I got two different copies pretty much of the exact same book. And, I was never, ever a big book reader in my life. Ever. I was never a strong reader. Let's just be real frank and keep it real simple. I liked reading. I also liked writing. I wasn't a strong speller, and I wasn't a strong or fast reader. The first book I ever fully completed in my life as a very, very young adult, a teenager, was, one of the Greek mythology books where it just had, what little was left from the Templars, burning of books, what information was left, and reading that. And when reading that, I never thought that I would have, at that time, I never thought that I would have the same assumption that I do now, 20, 30 years later, of what I think of Greek mythology and the Greek gods. That my opinion of who they are, what they were, and everything has definitely 100% changed as I've grown, when, read into certain things and, educated myself more, just, stumbling across more things that, give me my own personal beliefs of what those people and those higher powers represented versus when I originally read them as a young adult.
Yeah. Right around the time I met you, I had gone through this process of going through a few different religions and stuff. And I was a pretty confused young person. And when I met you, I was coming to this conclusion that most religions were just a historical context, not to tell us where we came from, but as a guide on how we were supposed to move forward from where we came. You know, that's what a lot of religions, they all pretty much have that built into them, right? Like, this is how you move forward with coming from where we come from. And, you know, the whole don't eat this food or don't eat that food, that comes from where we lived in the world. Certain foods just don't grow right, or certain animals don't grow right in certain regions of our world. You take an animal like a pig and try and grow it in the desert, it's not going to be a good tasting animal. Okay. So a religion that comes from the desert is going to tell you, don't eat the pig. It's not good. But then they're going to be like, oh, dude, you can jack this camel up, though. You can get on some hump. Yeah. Get you some nice water hump. Oh, yeah. Nice and juicy. Yeah. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But here in America, we don't eat no fucking camels. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a big thing here. Yeah, I would assume it tastes probably like goat or moose. You know?
That was talking shit. Yeah.
I know. I don't know. Even as a chef, I've never had camel myself, but I've heard it tastes really good though. It's a fatty, watery meat because that's how they're designed. But then, we go to other parts of the world and they're like, oh, you can only eat fish at this certain time of year. Or, oh, you should only. Every religion has something like this where they have accordances with diets and stuff like this. And when to plant your crops was even in original religious texts and stuff. When to sow and when to reap, things like that on the 40th month, on the 40th day of this whatever from this symbol of the sky or whatnot, you should reap, because if you wait 2 more days, you'll get a frost on your harvest and everything will go bad or whatever. So all of that, right? It all comes to. So from a very young age, I had picked up on a lot of this, and I didn't know what to do with it as a young person, because back then, dude, it was real easy to offend people about religion and stuff like that. Like back then, that was like the one big thing. Like a lot of people were like, fuck you, you're not a Christian, or fuck you, you're this or that. It was at that time in our society, religion was just one of those really hard things to talk about.
I grew up, I mean, I'm sure you know. I mean, I grew up religious. Both of my parents, went to church every Sunday, and we went to a Methodist church. So
your church was cool.
We were the hippies, for sure.
Yep.
Christianity, and I mean, I went there at a very young age. As a teenager, my parents gave me the choice of saying that they weren't going to force me to go. When I became a teenager, they said, you have the choice. We're going this Sunday. You can go or you can't go, or you don't go. It's up to you.
Yeah.
And so I would go, sometimes as I got to be an older teenager, I didn't go as much, mostly because I was just being a troublemaker and an idiot. And, my, kind of outtake on religion and on that religion now is, I got no problem sending my kids to Sunday school, and it's not as much to learn the teachings of the Bible, although I think that you should look into the Bible and you should read the stories and get your own opinion of it, because I think a lot of people base opinions off of expectations versus readings. But my one thing in my being in a Methodist church, is I felt like it was for me a good environment just to learn the basics of the type of person you should be. Be a good person, be caring, care about your community, help people. There's nothing wrong with helping people that need help, and that's
Right.
that makes you be a good person. Be good. Don't go out and just kill people because you think it's fun or cute or you got beat. It's just, and that's for me. That's what that environment represents. And I'm not like a diehard believer of the readings, of the preachings, of this that. Like Methodists are one of the few that are very pro-gay. You know what I mean? By the time I left my church community due to moving, the pastor, I hope I said it right. Pastor, I got different terms. She was a gay woman. No one cared. I mean, there was, how many straight couples there were at my church? They didn't give a fuck that she was gay. It didn't matter.
It's not, yeah.
It did not matter. You know what I mean? And even they did a vote one time with the church community, and a lot of it being an older generation church. You know what I mean? Our elders definitely outnumbered the younger generation that were going into the church. And I mean, they did a vote one time. They're like, we all strongly and totally believe that you don't have to just be a Christian to find your way to God or whoever. You just need to believe in good. You know what I mean? Like, you can believe in Buddha or Shiva, or you can believe in whatever version of God you need to believe in. The title and the name doesn't matter. Just believe in being a good person. Like that's what gets you there. And that kind of stuck with me. Even when I was when I was learning to not just be a Bible pusher, which I never really strongly was, but when I was finding my own space, learning and knowing that meant a lot to me. I was like, well, that makes sense. If somebody lives down in Iraq or whatever, and all they have is the Quran, or they have, it's like, so what? They don't get to go to heaven when they die because they didn't have the same book as us. You know what I mean? So
exactly. That's where I was leading to with what I was saying was that when you boil down to it, each religious book is regionally locked, but they all have the same core value information for the region that they were built for.
Yep.
And the title God, it doesn't mean that's his name. Like, the title God is the position in which you place that deity.
Well, I mean that's like
yeah,
like that's kind of like what me and you were talking about the other day about Sentinel Island. You know what I mean? If one of us were able to go there and have we were able to go there and they weren't able to just easily kill us, type of bodysuit, what the fuck ever. They'd be like, okay, we tried killing you like all the other white guys that showed up before, and kill you with a spear. Now we must praise you. You know what I mean? Because now we fear you.
Yeah.
That would make me God, right? To them.
In a sense, yeah. Yeah. You definitely if you show up with armor that they can't fuck you up with, that's pretty much how it works. In a sense, because that would be exactly what we would view whatever happened back then when the angels came to earth, when God talked to
the Titans,
like
the Greek gods, the Norse gods,
or the Norse gods.
I mean, they were, and I mean, when you talk about the Greek gods and the Norse gods, what makes me believe that there's something there is the similarities of all of the stories between those two titled as different religions. I mean,
well, they're titled as different religions, but they're very similar in aspect, theology, and then you take those two religions and they also carry over into the world of the Christianity, because if you take all the gods and just relabel them as angels, or all the demigods and the lesser gods, take them all, relabel them angels, and then have Zeus or Odin as the Allfather or as God, and then it just all fits in place, man. All the like that's what I was saying is all the religions are interlocking the same. They're just, I think they're just region locked to the parts of the world that
Well,
they
and
were needed in.
retails. I mean, you know what I mean? Even before, because if I'm to believe in, you know, the Greek mythology, it's still, I don't think that the Greeks were living among the gods under Olympus. I think that they were still finding ways to retell stories from even further back from their civilization. If you ask me my opinion, you know what I mean? 'Cause,
Yep.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of similarities in Greek mythology to the Sumerian texts.
Yeah, there are.
Um,
They line up a lot. They do. They line up a lot.
You know, so I think it's, you know, different. I think it's different cultures and different eras trying to use similar stories to make sense of it all. I mean, the biggest thing that stands out to me is the fallen angels bear children with women created in large humanoids
and monsters.
and monsters. And there's tons of weird hybrid monsters in Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And-
there's not there's it's in the Indian text,
No,
the
yeah,
Sikh
I'm just
text.
playing with
Oh
the-
man, it's everywhere.
the Greek mythology because that's what we've been talking about. No, I 100% agree. It's, you know, I mean, if you talk about, you know, you talk about India, I mean, they got more gods than I can
Oh yeah.
counter. I don't even know the name.
No, I don't know
of
all
all
their
the Indian
gods'
gods.
names
They have
either. No.
tons of gods, and
The,
some of them
the,
were
the
outrageous.
two I know the most are like Shiva and Vishnu. Those are like the two gods that
You know?
are the most commonly, you know.
So, but you know,
yeah.
my point is, you know, it's like even Greek mythology, I feel like is almost them documenting and doing write-offs of things that happened prior, and I think that their political powers were almost retelling old stories as a means of control, no different than we do today with Christianity. And you know, when it comes to Christianity, to take this story into a little bit of a twist, when I was a young adult, when I was a very young teenager, my biggest problem that I had with Christianity was how Christianity became a powerhouse religion. I never understood, nor did I like the fact that I was supposed to follow a religion based upon good that only was made as big as it was based off conquer and forcing of the religion, the burning of the books, the Templars, like that shit all. As soon as I learned that shit, it completely twisted and fucked my head up entirely in being brainwashed by the religion itself. 100%. There was no way. I mean, that was my immediate turning point. Honestly, as soon as I was given that information, I was like, well, then how does this right? What positive and promoting word can be positive if it was forced upon people that had their own beliefs, and we went into their regions, their areas, and said, guess what? You're Christians or you're dead. And all your books of your own religion, we're going to burn and leave nothing left except for the couple of scraps we have remaining in the Vatican.
Right. So there were those instances, and then there were also instances where when new kings came into power, they would choose a new religion, and they had to try and sway their people kindly into the new religion, and it was hard Christianity was the last time they did it.
But
they did it a couple times before.
It's all a political poll. It's all a political.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm totally saying, like, yeah.
That's what pisses me off about it. And like I said, so, I mean, and that's where, as a young adult, that's what I was taught. And as soon as I was given, those stories, that was like my branching point. That's where, like, Mom, Dad, I get where you stand. I'm being given this information, and it's pushing me over there. I can't. I agree in the beliefs of being a good person, being a part of your community. If I see some old lady struggling to get across the street with her groceries, I'm absolutely going to stop and I'm going to help her get across the street. And she's going to say, "Oh, young whippersnapper, let me give you $10." And I'll be like, "No, my name's Craig. I hope to see you again. I'm glad I got to help you. You have a fabulous day, Miss Mary," or whoever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to want to be a good person and be a representation of a good person to inspire other young people to continue to be good people, because there's power in that, and that I'm behind. But I'm not going to say that I'm selling your book, because I think your book's a bunch of rewritten bullshit that's used for political power, and that's where I broke off. That's where I found my own way. I'm not a strong believer of any community or of any religion, realistically. And if I was going to pick a religion, it'd be one of the ancient ones, because I think that there's more truth there than there is in the modern day ones. And I want to know more about our past, not about our present, or not about who our next mascot president's going to be. I could care less. You're all fake in my eyes.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I do have me and Eileen have do have a chosen religion, and we don't.
I know.
We just don't.
We're based on it.
Huh? Yeah, we don't. We just don't. We're not always like in your face about religion, everywhere. But me and my wife do believe in something. You know what I mean? And we believe in being good, and the revelations of karmic reality is to where, like, karma is real. And if you put good out into the world, good only comes back to you. If you put bad out into the world, only bad's going to come back to you. And that's what,
That's where I think the documentary The Secret back in the early 2000s, I really enjoyed that one, because that's exactly what that documentary preached, was that if you decide to be positive and project positive, you're going to see positive and receive positive. And what I liked most about that story, or that idea, was so they made a reference to like driving almost in road rage, and it's you get behind the wheel and oh, speed up, I'm trying, I have somewhere to be, I gotta get there, hurry, and I'm trying to get around you, and and it's like if you jump out, we've all jumped on the highway. You jump on the highway, and you're just in a good mood. You're just like, hey, I'm gonna get to where I'm going. I'm gonna get there. It's fine. Yeah. And you just drive. Yep. I promise you, your drive is gonna be way more peaceful, way more enjoyable than if you jump on that highway and you're like, I gotta get to now. Everybody, you're just angry, you're infused, you're upset. That drive is gonna suck, and nobody else is doing anything different than if you were in a good mood versus you were in a bad mood. They're all doing their own same things because they're feeling their same ways. Your energy is what's different, and so then you're receiving that and other energy differently. And one of the best examples about this, I think we talked. I bring up a couple of episodes ago, was I was in my car, the car with my mom on my way to Southdale, and we were on 66 and 10. And this is the first time I ever seen this happen with my mom, and it scared me. It really genuinely, I was genuinely scared. You know how much I love my mom. I love my dad too, but I'm a mama's boy. You know, I love my mom. We're driving. She's driving, and I'm in passenger seat, and she just starts struggling to gasp her breath. She is almost like hacking up, trying to get a breath into her body, like literally. And we're at the stoplight, light turns green, and here she is just trying to breathe. And it was so scary for me to the point where I almost grabbed my cell phone and called 911 for an ambulance. You know, I'm like, you know, I mean, it's going on for so long. I'm like, is she gonna get this breath? Like, is my mom about to just suffocate herself by not being able to get a breath and just breathe and do her thing? You know, and during, you know, all this in my head, where I'm, you know, worried about the well-being of, you know, my everything, my mom. The guy behind us is just, you know, just talking like we're just ignoring the fucking green light, and he's trying to get to where the fuck he's going. And, you know, we missed the entire light. The episode that my mom was having passes, and, you know, instantly I'm asking a bunch of questions. Like I said, I've never seen this before. You know, what was that? What's going on? Are you okay? Like, do we need to just turn around and go home? Are we still going to go shopping? Like, what's, you know, I'm asking all these questions, and my mom, because she knows that I've told this idea of, or used, you know, like on the road hypotheses for this scenario. She was like, Craig, she's like, this is the perfect example of what you always say. She's like, that guy behind us that was freaking out and probably hates us right now has no idea that you were about to call an ambulance because you were afraid that I wasn't even going to be able to breathe for the next 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah. So I guess we're still going to something now. Okay, like, you're good. Like, but you know, like, you know, it's like that, you know, it's 100% that what you give out into the universe is what you bring in. And I mean, the positive and negative energy and what people bring of that, I think plays a big part in what your universe is. You know what I mean? I feel like in a sense, we all live in our own universes. You know what I mean? I have my own universe. I live in my own reality. You know, I see it every day, and I think you have your own. And I mean, luckily for me and luckily for you, our two universes intertwined with one another. Then we get to play a part in each other's universe.
Well, they rub up against each other.
They do. They completely cross each other's paths. And I think that, you know, I think when you run into individuals that are naturally negative, I think that it can be very toxic at times. I think that it can really ruin your own reality and your own universe that you've created for yourself, because it manipulates your thought and how you perceive your reality and your world, which is what I was trying to get at with this point. Is keeping positive people around you is beneficiary towards you, especially if you're already naturally a positive person. I mean, if you're a negative person, whatever, you're probably attracting those negative people to be a part of your lives, and that's why they're there. But you know, I think that looking at this world in a positive outlook is important, because you know you're going to be able to shelter yourself from the negative. You're obviously going to see it. You're going to know what bad is out there, but you're going to keep a lot of that positivity closer to you, and that negativity is going to be further away.
Yes, that's true. That is very true. I've been a peer witness of it. I've watched it completely happen. You know, on the whole level of, dude, at one point in time during my life, I was not the happiest person ever. And I was not afraid to let other people know, like, I'm not in a good mood. You know, just don't fuck with me. you know, like,
You know,
but
you're angry.
it wasn't that I was trying to put out the negative energy. It was just, you know, I would just be that person. Like, no, I'm not in a good, I haven't been in a good mood in 2 weeks. Don't fuck with me, you know. But growing up, like, from where I grew up and everything into becoming a young adult at the age of 18 to 21, man, those 3 years, I was a very sour, bitter adult. I did not like being an adult. I did not like where life had put me, where I had placed myself, or anything. Like, it was all just like not
the
happy time for me.
you were given weren't the best, and I think
No,
that you turned out in one of the best opportunities that you could have known you as that young man. I think that you.
oh yeah,
and
I'm
I think you
definitely in a.
went on strong soil.
Oh yeah, and along with that, like, I was given an opportunity to correct myself at a pivoting point in my life where it was go this way and keep going down the line of, yep, you know, it was one way or the other way. It really was, and it was a clear one way or the other way, and I didn't want to go the other way. The way that option wasn't like, it didn't look appealing.
Life. Let's just go there.
She definitely played a big portion
on you grounding yourself, because you know as well as I do that she helped you sway. You know what I mean? That
well, she definitely put those
she gave you
options in front of my
in a
face.
sense.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
definitely. And you know, she like I told her before, like, you're my rock. You know, like, there's been tons of hard places, but you've always been my rock. You know, so don't worry. And you know, she tells me I make her feel safe, and I'm just. I giggle. I don't know how that's a possibility, but it's true. That's what she tells me. She tells me I make her feel safe, and that makes me feel good, I guess, because I've put myself in a position to where my wife feels safe with me. My children know I'm not going to let some random fucking dude run up in my house and do some crazy shit or anything. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, because there are those times where the kids are like, Dad, what's going on? You know, I'm like, don't worry about it. Go that way. You know, there's been a few of those instances in life where I've had to snap out of whatever was distracting me and go, oh, I have kids. Go inside, hurry up, you know. But the whole reality of it is, yeah, Eileen has done so much for me in helping me be the better person that I should be in life. And that's what makes our relationship so great, dude. You know, yep. And then I got good friends too that throughout life that have, yeah, right. You know, definitely you, but like I've had good friends throughout my whole from 13 all the way to now. You know, as I have less friends today, but I do have a lot of friends that I can mention throughout time.
One of the things that stuck with me the most growing up that I was told at a young age is the people around you are around you because there's one similarity or another with who you are that is also reflected in who they are. And so how I took that was, you know, like at a young age, you looked at who my circle was and who I was as a person. Every single person that was around me, whether I, you know, was a fan of them necessarily or not, because I had a decent sized circle, and some of the people that we hung out with on the regular, I wasn't necessarily like yeah, I fuck with this dude, but he was a part of my circle. And so when I was told that, I started looking at those people, and I started trying to figure out why they were a part of my life at that time. You know, why were some of the people that I didn't necessarily like, I wasn't necessarily a fan of, why were they a part of my life then? And what similarities did they have with me that made them a part of my life, even though I didn't like them? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And as going through that thought process and that phase, I felt like, I was able to change who I was as a person by finding those similarities. Like, okay, that's why this dude's in my circle right now. How do I take that out of me? How do I take him out of my circle? I don't want him in my circle when I'm 25. I don't want to still be associated with this person. So what do I have to change about myself to make it so that me and him no longer have a similarity, and then he is no longer a part of my universe, no longer a part of my similarities? If that makes sense.
Yeah, but then there's also the other way where it's like me and you, we're always looking for more things that make us similar so that we have more reasons to be friends, to do things together, to
that's the
to have that.
That's that's the that's the other like yin to the yang. That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As much as you find people that you don't want to associate yourself with anymore because you realize they're no longer. I mean, in a survival state, it's almost you no longer strengthen me, so I don't want to strengthen you. So, but
in a sense, I can. Oh yeah.
This person over here, I do like who they are. I like what, like because that was my biggest thing was okay. Why are me and Oz friends? What characteristics do we share that make us friends? Because that's the only reason that we have a connection is because there's some type of characteristic that we share to where we're able to connect on that level. So what makes that? Okay, I want to strengthen that because I like that feeling. I don't want to strengthen this feeling over here with this guy because I don't like that. When I realize what me and that person's similarities is, I don't like it. So that means that there's something I need to change within myself to change to the point where me and that person don't have a similarity anymore, and they can exit from my circle. Yeah. And that's, and I very strongly felt and stuck with that almost thought process and moral throughout all of my mid to late teens and 20s until I found myself in an environment and in a group that I did like the similarities that I shared with the people that were around me. And even some of the people that I felt like I shared similarities with they still weren't 100% what I would want to be within my circle. I realized that the things I liked about those people were the good things that I liked about myself. So maybe still keeping them around, even though they're not as positive I would like them to be, I can maybe help them out to get to a better point where they can stop being so negative and they can feed off my positivity because I do still want to better the people that I care about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we've all had one friend like that, where we've wanted our positivity to benefit them, and like my friend was that little Steve dude with the long hair that I used to hang out with. I still got a lot of love for him, and I'm still friends with him, but I don't do nothing like I used to do for him. Nothing. I used to find him jobs. I used to get him, all sorts of things, hook him up, help him out, put him in the right direction. I stopped doing that. Like that was just one of those things. Like I did come to that conclusion where, yeah, man, I'm putting too much energy into this, and you ain't putting no energy into this over here. So, we're gonna go our separate ways on a lot of things. Now, when I see you in public or when I have time to converse with you, I'm still your friend. But for the most part, I'm not going to consider you when it comes to an opportunity anymore. I'm going to go to my next friend who's going to be positive, who's going to take charge, who's going to do everything they can. That's just the way I've been for a long time. And you've pushed me to be that person to always, man, if there's people around you and they're not bringing your life up, they're not contributing. and that's not helpful to anybody, you know. And that's something you definitely pushed with me a lot, you know, as you being like one of my older brothers throughout this whole adventure of life, you know, because I met you and Nick. I was 13. I met you and Nick. I was just sitting in the back of Nick's yard bumming the smoke. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, no, my brother was stealing your bike from Roosevelt, and I kept telling him, like, dude, you need to knock that shit off. Let's go. Let's get out of here. And he was on like rollerblades or something, and I was on a bike. Or no, I was on rollerblades and he was on something else. And so I couldn't get away fast enough, and, you know, guilty by association. So I took my licks, you know. But yeah, Craig came running up like this, busted me right in the face. And I just, like, he hit me a couple more times, and I just looked at him. I said, I didn't even do nothing, man. I was trying to get him to stop. And then you just ran off back to the car. Fuck you. You know, and that was the first time me and Craig had any interaction with each other. The next time me and Craig had interaction with each other, I had met Craig's other homie. His name's Beatdown. And I became quick friends with Beatdown, me and my homie at the time. And then Craig had showed up. And that was like a whole different instance, because it was like I had forgot who Craig was at the time. Like it never dawned on me that it was the same dude from the high school that, you know, busted my head up a couple times. And you know, that didn't cross my path.
Not even at 3 hours.
Exactly. I was close.
Yeah.
So moving on, it was cool. And then we all lived in the same neighborhood and stuff. And that was really what just drew me into the crowd. And I never liked hanging around with people my age. And there was one other kid that was just like me. And he's still part of, you know, like Craig, you were just talking to me about him the other day. He was the other guy that was just like me. We didn't like hanging around with the people our age. So me and him were always trying to hang out with Craig's age of people. And it was just one of those situations where, yeah, we felt like the younger crowd, the kids that were our age or younger, they weren't benefiting us at the time to even be hanging around them or anything.
Well,
and it was like,
we
felt like it was.
I was just at a good friend Patrick's birthday kind of together at Dub's house. And you know, and we were just talking, you know, me and him sat in the back kitchen, you know, at our buddy Dub's house, and we were just talking. Me and him talked for like an hour and a half, just undisturbed. Yeah. Everybody else is off, you know, hanging out, partying, doing their own things. You know, even his cousins stopped by, like, "You guys are still talking?" And you know, Patrick was like, "Yeah, like me, Craig are catching up, you know, because you know, little Patrick, me and Jeremiah, like, he was younger than us. He had potential on the basketball court. Like, you know, we had took him under his wing. Like, we were like, hey, man, like, we want you to do good. We want you to be right. Like, you know, we will mentor you, you know. And, you know, so, you know, little Pat, you know, still holds, you know, much like you do, a lot of respect for me because of the way we addressed, you know what I mean, you know, you guys or him at that younger age. Like, hey, like, like, I you know, I see your value, see your own value, kind of a thing. And, but the big thing me and Patrick were talking about was our neighborhood that we grew up in South Minneapolis by Morris Park. There was a lot of small cliques that created our group, and I feel like it was a very rare opportunity that our many of different cliques of 3 to 5 were able to always come together on the basketball court or at Morris Park and just kick it. And there was never any animosity or problems. It was, you know what I mean? I mean, it was, you know, these 3 dudes over here, these 3 dudes over here, these 5 dudes here. We'd be able to the park. We're playing 7 games of basketball back to back. And anybody that was from outside of our neighborhood that just wanted to come and try and test our court and, you know, see what we had couldn't touch us because we had such good chemistry. We, you know, we fucked with each other. We, you know, had each other's back. We understood each other. We were on an ascended level with one another. And it was, you know, it was good. It was the 90s were good to our circles.
Yeah, and it was just. I felt like it was just a whirlwind. Like to be clear, like the way I felt how it all like circled up and how everything all came together. It was just like for me as a whirlwind. And by 2008, 2009, like we were going to parties 30 deep, 40 deep. You know, and where are you? Who are you? Know what do you say? We're not a gang. We're just a group of friends. You know, and like
that's what made
whole,
it so dangerous. That's what made it so dangerous. I mean, because I remember there was a time like when Jeremiah was living with me. There was a time, you know, what I mean, where it didn't matter if it was summertime. It didn't matter if it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It didn't matter what day it was. My phone was blowing up, and there was anywhere from 10 to 20 people that wanted to know where the party was, and they knew I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell them. I always had 3 answers. There's this party, and there's this party. I'm probably going to go check out this party first because it's such and such. If that one flops, I'm probably going to go to this party. But if you know this person, you might want to check out that party. And that was like, I mean, it didn't matter what day of the week it was. I knew where it was happening. That was my connection. Some people thought it was great. Some people frowned on me for it. Like that's all you're known for, Craig. And it's like I have connections. People know that I know where the spot's at, and people know that I go there to have a good time. I was never the guy that went to the party. It was like we about to steal some shit. We gonna fucking start a fight. That was never me.
Well,
and I
that's
plenty of
no
house parties at my own house. You know, I mean, I've had you know how small my house was. I'm pretty sure the record that I had at my house was once over 200 people, and we had 2 kegs and 600 Jello shots. 600 Jello shots, and I was selling those Jello shots for $1 a piece. If you buy 5, you got a 6th one for free. And everybody hated me for it. But by the time the second keg went out, and that second keg was done before midnight, was back in the 90s, that was a big deal. Like you ran through 2 kegs by before midnight. Like the party started at 10:30. Like you know what I mean? Like, and everybody went upstairs to the refrigerator where the Jello shots were, and we made a killing. Like it was great. Like, but you know, that was me. That was my gimmick. I knew people. I knew who I liked. People liked me. I could go to any party, and as soon as I walk in the door, it's Craig. You know, they love to see me, and because they know I'm there to have a good time. And at the same time, I got their back. You know what I mean? The females loved me because I was never aggressive. Like I never hung out with my.
No, you weren't that guy.
Pussy. I hung out with my female friends to have a good time, and we had a shared respect. You know what I mean? They could come sleep over at my house, and they knew that I wasn't gonna try and make a move on.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, go to sleep. You know, you take my bed. I'll sleep on the couch. It's whatever. Like, you know, they knew I was a very respectful person, and that's why people loved finding my parties that I was either hosting or going to, and that's what it was. You know, it was that shared energy.
It was always fun going to parties with you back then. Like, it really was. It was just that was always fun. Like there's some moments where some shit would get weird once in a while, but it was never because of me or you or anybody we were with.
No.
There was always some person that was already too drunk at the party.
I'm honestly thinking that this year, you know, because I got the big 4-0 coming up this year. I'm honestly thinking that I might either do a house party theme at my house or at a friend's house, and just invite a bunch of people that you know, some of the people that I haven't even seen for the last 5 to 10 years, just be like, "Hey, I'm turning 40. House, you know what I mean? Just kind of just bring it old school. Like, hey, this is what we used to do. Let's do it." Kind of a thing.
Oh yeah. I'll cook the food.
We're pushing 3 years or 3 hours. I gotta go piss.